The 22nd century has entered an era of great technological progress. Advanced VR technology can read the brain's electrical impulses. The stimulation of the nerves makes players feel as if everything is really happening. The fifth generation of VR turned out to be a real breakthrough. The speed of nerve stimulation has increased 100-fold. It covers all five senses and even thoughts. The main character, Lee Hoen, is a pro gamer. In the previous, fourth generation VR, he reached rank 97 under the pseudonym Rodrigo Eldrigo. After earning a lot of money, Lee Hoen wanted to quit gaming, but he couldn't resist the new generation of Labyrinth World. To keep the hero playing, the developers sent him a free version, and the young man entered the game. Synchronization began. All of Lee Hoen's achievements were transferred. For 197 million points earned, the guy received 1.975 million OP. The hero started creating a character. The system offered him 5 types of character letters, and he chose the fourth one, an extended premium veteran letter for himself and his subject. This includes 1 combat spell, 1 talent, increased cast speed, and a veteran weapon set. The hero had to pay 3,000 OP. This time, Hoen will play under the pseudonym Wilhelm Meyer. The main character entered the top players of the fourth generation, and he was going to repeat his success this time. The pro gamer managed to reach this level thanks to one trick. He created a competent subject and developed him. And this time, Hoen did the same. He created Caesar. For the first time, the guy was able to receive the talent Genius. He also bought unique equipment and armor for his subject. The hero himself, in terms of characteristics, does not even measure up to a third-rate player. But this is the secret of Hoen's unconventional game. No one who has money will spend it on apostates, except him. After filling out the character's letter, the hero saw his subordinate. Caesar looked creepy. But this made Hoen even happier, because this big guy would follow his orders unconditionally. The transfer to the game Labyrinth World itself has begun. At this time, the hero received a system message. Now, subordinates have a loyalty scale. If the value drops to a certain level, the subjects will refuse to follow the boss's orders. This was not the case in the previous version of the game. Therefore, Hoen already regretted investing all his OP into a subject who could leave him. In the worst-case scenario, Caesar might even kill him. Nothing can be changed. The game has begun. Hoen and Caesar found themselves in the labyrinth city of Brahm. The subject immediately showed himself. He grabbed the first woman he came across and forced her to show him the way to the guild. Everyone around froze at the terrifying sight of Caesar. His stupid fame immediately grew. Following the directions of the unknown woman, the heroes entered the slums. There, almost immediately, a pickpocket set his sights on Hoen. The kid came closer and pushed the hero with all his might. Even that was enough to knock him off his feet. Hoen had already mentally said goodbye to his subject. He believed that after such a scale of loyalty, Caesar would immediately fall. The main character's synchronization had not yet been completed, so he could not control the character very well. Hoen's emotions were reflected somewhat differently. The guy felt bitter despair at that moment, but his expression spoke of uncontrollable irritation. The thug helped his boss get up. This is how the boss-subordinate connection was activated. The system reported that Caesar considers Hoen a charismatic boss. He also believes that the hero has a grand plan, but if the guy doesn't live up to the subject's expectations, the worst-case scenario is activated. The first task, catch a pickpocket, has appeared. If the hero fails to complete the task within 10 minutes, he will lose his starting capital. Hoen couldn't let that happen. He exercised his boss powers and ordered Caesar to carry out the task. The subordinate hurried after the little hooligan, and Hoen noticed that the woman showing the way to the guild was looking at him with disapproval. Her fear was dispelled when Caesar disappeared from sight. To regain his authority, Hoen reminded him that his boss had beaten him up. The frightened woman handed the hero 1 kupar, the monetary unit in this game. But this is not what the hero had hoped for. You can't even buy a gnawed apple for that amount. Hoen stopped pressing the woman. Then a message appeared about the task being successfully completed. Caesar also appeared later. He tied the pickpocket to his giant sword. The level of cruelty of this big guy was off the charts. He brought indescribable fear to the main character. But Hoen couldn't show weakness, because then he would lose his authority. In a rude mood, Hoen said that no one solved things that way. To reassure his boss, Caesar assured him that there were no witnesses to his actions. He was ready to kill the guy to satisfy the boss's anger. But Hoen stopped his subject with a question about the benefits. Caesar thought about it, and then he assumed that the boss wanted to deprive the little bastard of everything. But in reality, Hoen just wanted to get a quest from a small NPC. The protagonist's stupid fame has increased again. While Hoenn was trying to figure out how to fix the situation, Caesar found 200 gold kupari from the robber. The kid immediately admitted that he got them by robbing many weak rich people. Hoenn tried to hint to the kid about the quest. He asked if the boy would continue stealing, and he assured that number. But the protagonist expected a quest, not repentance. Caesar misunderstood the boss again. He thought that Hoenn was trying to get a percentage of the baby's theft, and so he threatened the guy with violence. He didn't have to wait long for the result. The frightened boy agreed to steal and give the main character 90% of the profits. Caesar broke the pickpocket psychologically and physically. As a result, Hoenn received a new stat, charisma. But he didn't want that kind of charisma. Caesar expressed his admiration for the boss and his cruelty. Now the main character has 200 golden kupari. Hoenn gave his subject half of the spoils and hoped that his loyalty would increase. But nothing has changed. Soon the temporary companion informed the heroes of her arrival. She pointed to the door of a shabby tavern. It was a guild of criminals. Hoenn hoped to join the Adventurers Guild. Seeing the hostile looks of everyone present, the main character became quite frightened. No, not Caesar. The hero's subject expressed a desire to get rid of the woman who had brought them. At this, a creepy smile appeared on his face. Hoenn, as a boss who doesn't want any trouble, forbade touching the civilians. If the authorities find out about this, they will not leave the hero alone. Then Caesar drove the woman away with his terrible voice. Hoenn, who felt genuinely sorry for her. Until now, he had felt sorry for only one woman. One day he met her in a game. While the hero was wandering in his memories, Caesar was busy joining the guild. To do this, it was necessary to make the first contribution, 5 kupars. Caesar immediately took out the money. The bartender, who was a guild employee, was surprised that the newcomers had such a sum. He gave the heroes wooden tokens as proof of their membership in the guild. But Caesar took this as an attempt to deceive the boss. Everyone present was surprised that Health was subject to some snot-nosed underdog. This is exactly what the main character looks like. These conversations reached Caesar's ears, and he couldn't allow the boss to be mocked. And so he taught one talker a lesson with a powerful blow. After this, Caesar's anger did not subside. He wanted to kill everyone gathered. Hoenn intervened in the situation. He explained to his subject that the wilds had their own laws, and they had to be followed. And it worked. Caesar calmed down. The protagonist expressed a desire to receive the quest and start working. The guild worker suggested 3 options: rat catching, debt collection, and patrolling. After some thought, Hoenn chose the second option. One of the guild members, Hans, promised to take the main character to the debtor, and he immediately warned that he does not work for free. Hoenn and Caesar set out on a mission. On the way, the main character's subject admitted that the boss's choice was the most profitable. He decided that Hoenn was going to confiscate all of the debtor's property and sell it. But in the guy's thoughts, it was not even that close. Hoenn ordered Caesar, in the strictest possible terms, not to make hasty decisions and to behave more restrainedly. Soon the heroes arrived at the required location. Hoenn noticed a lot of expensive goods in the trading shop. The shop owner immediately realized that the people came from the guild. He extended his deliberately dirty hand to Hans in greeting. The husband recoiled in disgust. Caesar took it upon himself to shake the debtor's hand. He promised his boss that he would comply with local laws. The owner of the shop realized in an instant what trouble he was in. Caesar squeezed his hand tighter and tighter. The moment came when the man simply began to scream in pain. But Caesar did not stop. Suddenly, the owner of the bench fell silent and fell dead to the ground. Hoenn froze in fear. His subject killed a man with a handshake. The system notified about the task completion. The heroes' team received 350 gold kupars. Returning to the guild, Caesar paid the contribution for the quest. The guild member began to be wary of newcomers. Their strength is not at all commensurate with their level. With these indicators, Hoenn and Caesar can immediately go to the labyrinth. But the main character wanted to play like this, and his subject cares nothing but what his boss thinks. A guild member noticed that the newcomers were nothing but trouble. However, he couldn't just take them and drive them away. The man was forced to issue genuine guild badges. They are enchanted and allow you to develop skills. These icons should also be hidden from concerned citizens. Hoenn thanked him, but was unable to take the well-deserved thing. The bartender immediately hid the badges, saying that they still needed data applied to them. The main character felt that he was being mocked. He focused his furious gaze on the guild worker. He realized that the joke had failed, so he changed the subject and started talking about housing. But Caesar wasn't going to leave things like that. He grabbed the bartender by the bar and forced him to apologize for mocking his boss. The guild worker, just to break out of his delight, immediately offered free accommodation. Caesar decided that this was not enough. Although Hohen really liked the offer, the bartender noticed that this was too much. Then the big guy smashed part of the bar counter with a blow of his sword. The guild worker began to apologize for his joke. Then he offered 100 gold coins. Hohen even liked this development of events very much. But the expression on his face said something completely different. So Caesar continued to threaten, saying that this was not enough for the boss. The bartender also gave the main character a broadsword. This is a magic sword that increases strength by 3 units. Hohen was more than satisfied when he assessed the weapon. But again, poor synchronization made its own adjustments. Caesar noticed the displeasure on his boss's face. And that was the last straw in my patience. Well prepared to finish off the bartender. Hohen didn't understand why Caesar was taking his reaction so differently. But at the last moment, the subject's sword encountered an obstacle. A girl named Lena appeared from the attic hatch and stopped Caesar's attack. The healthy psycho didn't scare her at all. Caesar told the girl to disappear, but she didn't even think about it. The repeated warning went unheeded. Caesar has considerable experience in battles, so he is able to quickly identify a strong opponent. He was in no hurry to engage in battle with Lena. This means that the girl is stronger than him. Hohen assumed that she belonged to the top of the guild. Lena's reaction speed was simply amazing. The hero could only guess how high her level of dexterity was. Despite Caesar's enhanced speed and strength, Lena is able to defeat him. And all because it is easier for a more agile player to hit vital points. Hohen didn't want to start a fight with a high-ranking representative of the guild. He doesn't want to lose Caesar at the very beginning of the game. But the hero could not retreat because then the level of loyalty of the subject would decrease. Hohen decided to ask Lena's opinion about the situation. On one side is the seller who made a mistake, and on the other is the buyer who is seeking an apology. Lena took into account the fact that Hohen and Caesar were not buyers. They are new members of the guild, just going through their probationary period. And these people can only be trusted to wash windowsills and floors. There was logic in the girl's words. This hurt the protagonist's pride. He showed a bag with 500 gold coins and noted that there were no cleaners with such a fortune. This amount is enough to open your own store. Lena was stunned and now didn't understand why Hohen needed a part-time job at the guild at all. But he said that every big store has its secrets. And these secrets, experience, knowledge, and wisdom, cannot be bought for money. The girl liked the hero's explanation. Now she understood why health was subject to Hohen. Then Lena decided not to interfere in the situation. The bartender couldn't believe that the girl was refusing to fulfill her duties as the guild's protector. However, she gets away with it because of the manager's favor. Lena returned back to the attic, and at that moment Caesar dealt with the bartender. The stupid glory of the big guy grew to 10 and Hohen to 20. Caesar believed that this would quell his boss's anger. Not long before these events, Lena was bored in the attic. She was forced to listen to the meaningless conversations of the tavern patrons every day and protect them. If it weren't for the contribution to the guild, the girl would never have agreed to this. She was dying of boredom, but suddenly Caesar smashed the bar in the tavern. Then Lena saw a big guy thirsting for blood. She was surprised by the fact that such a bloodthirsty creature had a boss. Besides, he's just an ordinary guy with a tired look. What happened next impressed Lena even more. The two managed to get 100 gold pieces out of the bartender. The girl couldn't believe it, but the boss's face was displeased. The bartender offered a pretty good sword. Lena was hoping to see a different reaction. But the hero's stern look indicated that there was no forgiveness for the bartender. And then Lena decided to intervene. When the girl saw the state of the main character, she was completely confused. And then she realized that she was wrong about Hohen. Lena noticed that the guy with the tired look had great potential. And Hohen realized that something was wrong with his face due to the poor synchronization. Caesar's actions led to unpredictable events. If the guild members decide to take revenge for their employee, their health will not cope with them. Hohen realized that there would be no normal game. Everything was abnormal from the start. The protagonist told his subject that he had made a mistake. Caesar thought that the death of his boss alone was not enough to calm his anger, and he decided that Hohen was aiming for the suffering of this man and his entire family. That is, he turned everything upside down again. Stunned by the protagonist's cruelty, Lena came down from the attic again. Caesar immediately told her that the boss was a great man. He believes that Hohen will soon create a dark organization and destroy the world. This information became key in Lena's decision. The girl introduced herself as a 16-year-old killer, an incredible beauty named Leni. And then she expressed a desire to join the main character's team. Lena really liked the idea of a dark organization. She began to insist on cooperation, again listing her strengths. But the main character understood that such subjects would lead him to the grave. Hoenn refused to accept the girl. But instead of disappointment, Lena was happy. Despite the protagonist's decision, she called herself his subject. It wasn't until the system notification arrived that Hoenn realized what was going on. In this version of the game, NPCs can voluntarily join the team. For recruiting the assassin, the hero received +3 to charisma. Caesar's loyalty increased by 1. Now Hoenn's team consists of a crazy maniac and a killer. The main character couldn't do anything. These are the rules of the new game. He immediately sent Lena on a mission, and he himself, together with Caesar, went to the Adventurers Guild. Hoenn felt terribly tired, and he was worried that his subject would run amok in the Adventurers Guild, just as he had in the Criminals Guild. The hero looked with regret at Caesar, on whom he had spent $300 million. That was all the money he earned during his 10 years as a ranker. On the way, the heroes met a crying girl. Hoenn asked what the subject wanted to do when he looked at her. Caesar assumed that the boss was planning to force the child to beg, but the main character wanted to know what Caesar himself would do, despite the boss's wishes. And he said that he wouldn't waste his time on her. This answer calmed Hoenn down a little. As soon as the main character and his subject entered the guild, everyone immediately turned their attention to them. Nobody believed that these two were newcomers. There was a huge queue inside. Caesar was about to decide this issue, but Hoenn strictly ordered him to wait his turn. He finally found an approach to health. It's the main character's turn to register. The guild employee handed out badges. To use them, you need to drop blood on the surface. Then a window will appear with information about the user's characteristics. Based on these indicators, the system will suggest the optimal class. Suddenly, Caesar announced very loudly to everyone that soon everyone would find out what his boss was capable of. Even Hoenn himself was interested. Silence reigned in the hall. Everyone present feels fear. And all because Caesar has 4 advanced characteristics that are not available to ordinary people. The main character pierced his finger. He was simply burning with curiosity to see the result. The hero is subordinate to Caesar, which means the boss really has great potential. The system with results did not take long to appear, but the list of classes left Hoenn a little overwhelmed. The system issued 3 options: fraudster, swindler, and robber. The protagonist immediately looked at his subject. He feared that after such characteristics were discovered, Caesar's loyalty would certainly decrease. Considering what Hoenn had been doing all his time, the result was obvious. Due to the actions of his subject, the protagonist received a bad reputation, but he blamed only his own irresponsibility. A moment later, Caesar's tense expression disappeared. The list of classes has changed. This was achieved through the analysis of extended features. This takes more time, so the list was only updated later. Pleased with the result, Caesar announced to everyone that his boss was great. Now the main character had to choose between the classes boss, murder organizer, and hired killer. Hoenn didn't consider these options normal either. The hero's choice fell on the boss. The representative of this class is the highest in the organization. He relies on charisma. The stronger the members of the organization, the stronger the boss. Caesar received the marauder class. The logic of this title could not be argued with, and Caesar was proud of it. After registering, Hoenn and his subject headed to the adventurer's waiting room, and there the big guy showed himself again. He threatened to kill anyone who did not have a compelling reason to leave. The stunned protagonist reminded his subject of respect for others. He understood that such behavior would have negative consequences. More powerful adventurers will target them. But Caesar didn't think about it. His class allows him to get stronger with each new kill. And it seems that the hero's subject immediately began to improve his own indicators. One of those gathered said that he needed to put money into the account. Caesar wanted to take everything for himself. The guy did not agree and started running. But the big guy's dagger caught up with him. Panic gripped the crowd. Hoenn knew there was no turning back. If anyone manages to escape from the hall, they will immediately inform the security. The main character decided to scare everyone, so that no one would say a word about this situation. Hoenn used charisma. Noticing his boss's mood, Caesar decided that he was bored. Therefore, he promised to release alive those who could amuse Hoenn. One blonde guy dared to tell a joke. Caesar decided that he was not funny and wanted to deal with the guy. But then the main character laughed. He didn't want to admit it, but the joke was actually funny. Only Caesar didn't like the boss's reaction. Hoenn found a way out of the situation. He said that the joke really wasn't funny, but he laughed so that Caesar wouldn't kill everyone. And then the main character started clapping and laughing terribly. This made the crowd's skin crawl. Caesar had never seen such a boss before. Pleased with the result, the subject praised the Joker. And then the game continued. The adventurer's waiting room has been transformed into a prison cell. To amuse Hoenn, those present resorted to different options. Some juggled knives, but they began to fall and injure the juggler. It seemed like a failure, but that's what made Caesar and Hoenn laugh. Meanwhile, Lena wandered around the outskirts of the labyrinth city in search of the main character. On reflection, she came to the conclusion that he was indeed a great man. Hoenn is not part of the criminal guild, but plans to destroy the world. Therefore, he is the Lord of Demons. The hero's gaze really is such as if he is not afraid of any danger. His expression suggests that he has rejected everything human. Lena was glad that she could become a subject of such a great man. However, she failed her first task. The girl had to clean up the traces of a murder in the criminals guild. But at the last moment, she was almost caught. Luckily, Lena managed to escape. It was only late in the evening that Hoenn and Caesar left the Adventurers Guild premises. It was very cold outside. Caesar said that a warrior is not afraid of the cold. That's why the main character tried not to show it to his freezing subject. And he expressed his admiration for the boss's fortitude. Indeed, Hoenn was only thinking about taking the cloak from his subject. The main character purchased all the clothes and armor for Caesar using his own OP. And he himself is forced to freeze. This situation angered Hoenn, and he decided to take out his anger on the trash can. But when the urn fell, Lena climbed out of it. A few hours before this, the girl had wandered around the area for a very long time in search of the boss and Caesar. She even belonged to a guild, but she didn't find any comrades there either. When Lena was completely frozen, she decided to hide from the wind in a trash can. And she chose such a place so as not to be seen by any of the guild members by the criminals. The girl was surprised that Caesar and Hoenn weren't afraid to spend the whole day in the Adventurers Guild. It is known that some criminals are also part of this organization. If any of them had run into the boss, he would have been in trouble. Lena admitted that she failed to cope with the first task. She could not replace the traces of Caesar's crime. This made Hoenn extremely angry. He, without expecting it from himself, ordered Caesar to return the garbage to its place. Great instantly pushed the girl back into the trash can and placed a large stone on the lid. Only later did Lena get out and catch up with her comrades. She explained what happened during the mission. First of all, the girl cleaned the manager's office. To remove all valuables, Lena grabbed a subspace bag. She then planned to work with the corpse to frame the mercenary guild. But just at that moment, the manager returned. Lena was caught red-handed, and therefore she is now also considered guilty. Hoenn decided that it was better to break off any ties with the girl now and said goodbye. But suddenly Lena started crying. They treated her very cruelly. The girl got caught doing all the dirty work, and instead of gratitude, she received nothing. Hoenn was powerless against tears. He changed his mind about leaving Lena. The girl could have run away, taking the subspace bag with all her valuables. But she stayed. The team stopped at one of the taverns for the night. Hoenn booked a room with a bathroom for Lena, and not because he cares so much about his subjects, but because the girl smelled like garbage. The hero himself was going to settle down with Caesar, but there were only 2 single rooms available in this establishment. Hoenn could not leave Caesar without a place to sleep, as this would reduce his loyalty. The hero decided that he would sleep with his subject in the same bed, but I immediately remembered that health can kill a person with just one handshake. If he accidentally pushes Hoenn at night, the game will end. The hero gave up his room to his subject. He himself was going to look for another place to sleep. Rest is very important in the game. If you skip sleep, your lying and overall performance will begin to decline. Caesar, as usual, got it all wrong. He thought that the boss, having lulled Lena's vigilance, was going to kill her and take the room for himself. But the hero assured that he was not going to do this. He believed that the girl would still be useful. Hoenn found himself a room in an elegant hotel, but I only slept for 3 hours. As soon as the sun rose, Caesar was already there. He wiped his bloody sword with the boss's sheet. While Hoenn slept, his subject killed 7 people, and he assured that there were no witnesses left. The protagonist remembered Caesar's words about Lena and believed that health had dealt with her too. But at that moment, the hero's second subject appeared from a hatch in the ceiling, safe and sound. She decided that someone might attack the boss at night, and so she came to guard him. Caesar arrived for the same reason. A dispute arose between 2 of the hero's subjects. Each of them wanted to be more important to the boss. Meanwhile, Hoenn noticed many traces of a crime in the room, and so I decided to get out of there. Some of the new adventurers were leaving the labyrinth. They were all wounded. Everyone thought the previous version of the game was 3 times easier. On this day, the main character's team was also going to go to the labyrinth. Caesar's terrible appearance terrified the other adventurers. Hoenn thought out his plan of action well. With the giant's strength of 20 and Lena's agility, they can easily overcome many monsters. This way, the main character will be able to quickly increase the level of the group and his own. Hoenn chose a beginner-level task. Caesar and Lena did not understand the boss's logic. They hoped to fight worthy opponents, strong monsters. But the main character explained that this was necessary to confirm his own strength. In the center of the town of Bram, there is a strong wall. It contains an entrance to the labyrinth. A strong fortification prevents monsters from breaking out and attacking the city. The main character's team entered the first level. There were many corpses of adventurers lying there. Caesar hoped to encounter a monster like a minotaur or an ogre. He even wanted to demonstrate his strength. But instead of strong monsters, goblin marauders appeared. Caesar took up his sword, uttering threatening words. But while he was speaking, Lena killed the monsters by throwing daggers at them. Caesar became angry. He really doesn't like it when his prey is taken away. But the girl didn't pay any attention to it. She was tired of listening to her comrade's long, menacing speech. An argument arose between the two again. Only this time, everything was heading towards a fight. None of the subjects even noticed that the goblins were approaching. Hoenn remembered how the adventurers talked about the monsters being 3 times harder. The hero was overcome with panic. But a moment later, he noticed how Caesar and Lena, trying to hit each other, were destroying the monsters. The comrades deftly dodged the attacks. After a few minutes of fighting, they managed to kill all the goblins. The team's level increased by 78 units. Hoenn was more than pleased. Thanks to his subjects, he can do nothing at all and level up. The main character decided to praise the girl. But this led to a measuring of power between subordinates. To settle the situation, the hero added that this was the first time Lena had completed the task. Then Hoenn asked his subjects to hurry so that he too could have time to shoot someone. But the hero didn't want this at all. His synchronization level only reached 40%, which is why the character produced such a thing. The subjects were surprised. Lena really wanted to see the boss in battle. Hoenn didn't know how to get out of the situation. And then another old goblin appeared. Taking up arms, the hero prepared to attack. His main task is to look masculine. Hoenn missed his first attempt at striking. And then he got hit on the head with a stick by a monster. The hero swung his sword a second time. Thanks to the power of dispersion, he was able to injure the goblin. The frightened creature began to run. Hoenn threw his sword to catch up with the monster. But the hero's strength was so weak that the weapon flew only 2 meters. Hoenn didn't even want to know what his subordinates thought of him now. But Caesar said the boss did a lot better than he expected. With a body like the main characters, there can be no talk of fighting at all. Lena decided that the reason for Hoenn's weakness was an illness. The main character did not want to continue this topic. Having completed the task, the adventurers tried to get out of the labyrinth, but got lost. The team had to stay here overnight. Lena expressed a desire not to be on duty, as she was the youngest. But Hoenn noticed that Caesar was even younger, being only 15 years old. It was hard to believe because his health looked like he was at least 30 years old. That's why everyone will have to be on duty. Moreover, the main character blamed Lena for the current situation. Usually killers have the ability to orient themselves. But the girl hadn't studied anything like that. She leveled up stealth, infiltration, and assassination. Caesar also did some damage trying to help find a way out. He wanted to cut a path with his sword, but as a result, several other passages were blocked. Luckily, the main character took food with him for 2 days. Hoenn also had to be on duty. Because of his subjects, he hadn't gotten enough sleep the night before, and was therefore worried about his stats declining. When it was time for Lena to take over guard duty, Hoenn found her missing. The hero managed to get angry, believing that the girl had thus avoided being on duty. But a moment later, Lena appeared. She was amazed that the sick boss, despite his illness, also agreed to stand guard. As a token of her gratitude, Lena decided to teach the hero the skill, the art of killing. This is quite a rare occurrence. Usually NPCs will never agree to something like that, even for a lot of money. Lena's main skill is to quickly get close to her victim. The second rule is to hit only vital points so that the target dies instantly. Then Lena showed the blow. A small pit appeared on the wall of the cave. It all happened so fast that Hoenn didn't even have time to blink. Now he'll have to repeat Lena's strike 1,000 times to practice his accuracy. The force of the blow is also an important factor. If you overdo it a little, the victim's blood will stain everything around. Then the killer will be easily tracked down by the punishers. The protagonist concentrated and got to work. He tried as best he could, and his strength quickly left his body. Hoenn managed to make only 3% progress. Lena concluded that the boss had absolutely no talent for killing. At that moment, Caesar woke up. He noticed two adventurers passing by. Hoenn had hopes of asking for directions to the exit, but random passers-by, as soon as they saw the heroes team, immediately began to run away. The system has issued a new task, catch the adventurers, and she warned that there might not be another chance to find out the way to the exit. The main character just said Caesar's name, and he understood what he needed to do. The subject immediately rushed to catch up with the adventurers. Then Lena noticed another problem. If Caesar runs too far, he will not be able to find his way to the boss, as he has poor orientation. Realizing this, Hoenn ordered Lena to immediately run after the big guy. The hero's strength was only enough for 3 minutes of running. The girl suggested that the boss's illness was related to intolerance to physical exertion. This topic began to irritate the hero more and more, since he was completely healthy. The idea of catching up with Caesar lost its meaning. All that was left was to hope for the success of the big guy. At that moment, a notification came that Caesar had caught the adventurers. Only then did Hoenn calm down. Those people will be able to bring a big guy to the boss. Then the hero expressed a desire to thank Lena for trying to share her skill. And to her surprise, the girl only asked for some tasty food. Hoenn's inner self was satisfied with the simplicity of his subject. Suddenly, the system alert appeared again. Caesar had killed one of the adventurers. There was no limit to loot Hoenn. At that moment, Lena noticed another group of people passing by, but they immediately aimed their guns at the main character. They demanded that Hoenn release Lena, as they believed that he was holding her hostage. A new problem arose from an unexpected place. The hero did not understand why people perceived him this way. If nothing is done, Caesar will kill everyone, and then the guild will declare a hunt for the main character and his team. Due to lack of sleep, no normal ideas came to Hoenn's head, and then Lena started laughing. In the eyes of the adventurers, the boss is a terrible thug, and she is a fragile and sweet girl. The archer fired a preemptive shot, and then the unknown team rushed into attack. Daggers flew towards the main character. Lena instantly pushed the boss away, and thus he managed to avoid defeat. But the adventurers took this as Hoenn's skill. The unknown team stopped. One of the men confessed his love to the archer. This moment touched Lena, but not for long. The girl prepared to deal with the attackers. Then the system reported that Caesar had killed the second adventurer. Therefore, the level of the main character's party has increased. Hoenn received a new class skill, Boss Spirit. By earning the respect of his subordinates, the protagonist can instill fear in his enemies. Seeing the hero's face, Lena said that his expression was as if he killed 50 people every day. The adventurers approached in battle readiness. Time to try out a new skill. Hoenn hoped that the attackers would freeze in fear, but they were quickly approaching, as if nothing had changed. The distance between the protagonist and the adventurers has become critically close. But at that moment, Lena managed to push the boss away. The enemy's sword flew past Hoenn's head, and then for the first time, he saw his reflection on the metal of the blade. Suddenly, the enemy's weapon froze in place. The main character thought that the skill had finally worked. But the point was the appearance of Caesar. With one blow, the giant broke the sword pointed at the boss. Caesar explained that he killed the first two adventurers because they turned out to be scum. Those scoundrels robbed and brutally dealt with other groups in the labyrinth. But Caesar arranged everything and even captured their weapons. Hoenn didn't quite believe it. Those guys, as soon as they saw the heroes team, immediately ran away instead of attacking. But Caesar explained that the boss had a face as if he killed 50 people every day. Hoenn was amazed. To finally make sure that what was said was true, he also asked the attackers for their opinion. And they confirmed that the main character is indeed scary. Storve prepared to deal with the villains who decided to point a sword at the boss. Hoenn didn't want a bloodbath more than anything. To calm his subject, he came up with a more lenient punishment for attackers. The adventurers must wash away the blood from all the weapons that Caesar brought. The clean loot was placed in Lena's subspace bag. Hoenn hoped to sell everything. But then one of the adventurers reported that the guards at the exit of the labyrinth take 10% of the loot. To settle this matter, this same adventurer was sent to go first. He told the security about a group of murderous robbers. In order to quickly report this to the guild, the man asked not to conduct a search. Thus, the teams managed to escape without losses. Caesar has unlocked a new skill, intimidation, and he immediately tested its effect on adventurers. They froze in inexpressible fear from the big guy's eerie laughter. Then the teams went to the guild. There their paths diverged. Hoenn reported the situation. For eliminating the killers, his team received an additional 10 gold kupars. It also turned out that in addition to security, the guild also needs to contribute 10% of the production. It was a real robbery. Hoon expressed dissatisfaction, but the guild worker Errol quickly spoke to him. Noticing the team's unusual achievements, she made an offer to the adventurers. Errol wants to become their confidant. The main character accepted the offer. Thanks to this, the cost of contributing to the guild has been significantly reduced. Hoenn decided to thank his subjects for the successful expedition into the labyrinth. He put everyone up in a luxury hotel and invited them to a restaurant. Lena was so happy she couldn't understand herself. The only thing the main character asked was to behave decently. Caesar immediately noticed that this only concerned Lena, but the woman responded in kind, and again the two of them took down the booth. At the restaurant, Hoenn ordered all sorts of delicacies and drinks for his subjects. He completely forgot that Caesar and Lena were minors. Turning a blind eye to this, Hoenn suggested that Lena master the skill of orientation. But the girl categorically refused. She thought it was not cool. The hero had no choice but to hire a bandit with this skill or buy a card. Finishing his meal, Hoenn emptied his glass. This greatly worried Caesar. For some reason, Great decided that the boss was not allowed to drink more than one sip of alcohol due to illness. He believed that Hoenn was forcing himself to celebrate for the sake of his subjects. Lena believed it and was touched. She demanded that Caesar help the boss. However, Hoenn felt completely normal. Suddenly, the big guy got the idea to bring a priest to help, and he immediately rushed to search. Until the evening, Caesar did not stop for a minute, and finally he managed to carry out his dream. He found a representative of the clan of witnesses to the end of Louvric and asked for help. The priest did not refuse. Soon the two arrived at the protagonist's room. During all this time, Lena did not leave her boss's side for a moment. Hoenn tried to explain to the priest that there had been a mistake and that he did not need help. The main character began to prove this even more stubbornly when he learned that he was preaching the end of the world. Louvric worships the one who thirsts for innocent souls and feeds on their suffering. Hoenn gave the priest a bag of kupari and asked him to leave. But this gesture touched Louvric so much that he decided to definitely perform the ritual. No one had ever paid him money for his work in the church. In a loud voice, the priest began to pronounce the words of the ritual of the end. Hoenn wanted to stop it, but he couldn't. Leafing through the pages of his book and swiping his finger, Louvric ordered the disease to leave the hero's body. A thunderstorm crackled outside the window. The main character closed his eyes in fear. But a moment later, he realized that everything was fine with him. The priest pointed to the window. It turns out that his power struck not Hoenn, but another person. Louvric ran out into the street. Approaching the stricken man, he confirmed his death. Nobody understood what was happening. Caesar also jumped out after the priest to sort things out. Lena and Hoenn watched the events from the hotel window. Caesar pointed his sword at Louvric. It is clear to everyone that the priest shamanizes as well as he shouts. I really wanted to know what exactly his ritual was doing, which didn't look like healing at all. Louvric explained that he was reducing the patient's vital forces until the disease left the body. Caesar challenged the clan of witnesses to the end. He swung his sword, but the priest avoided the blow, and he immediately activated the shadow spears. Health managed to escape from the magical attack. Hoenn couldn't believe his eyes and was very worried about his subject. Caesar did not give up trying to defeat his agile and strong opponent. Louvric defended himself with a magic shield. He is able to absorb the force of an opponent's blow. Moreover, the priest moved incredibly quickly. So far, Caesar's sword had only managed to damage the spot where Louvric had stood a moment ago. But finally, he managed to reach the enemy. The priest held the giant's sword with the help of magical power. At first, it seemed that the strength of the representative of the witness clan of the end was running out. But a moment later, Hoenn noticed that the priest behind him was preparing a shadow spear. He deliberately let Caesar get closer to him. This makes it easier to hit vital points. The protagonist felt he had to help. However, no good idea came to mind. Caesar has no defense against magical attacks at all. Usually, enemies with strong spells appear only in the second half of the game. Even if the protagonist sends Lena into battle, nothing will change. The priest has a barrier against physical attacks. Hoenn struggled to think of anything that would break the spell. He shouted that the guards were approaching. For a moment, the priest's attention was distracted. Despite this, he performed a strike with the shadow spear. However, the priest failed to enter Caesar's body, and he didn't have time to put up a shield for an instant attack from the big guy either. Caesar pushed the representative of the forces of evil into the ground with one blow, and then he triumphantly informed his boss that he had dealt with the upstart. Not even a minute passed before the haystacks appeared. People who witnessed everything that happened pointed out the main character to law enforcement officers. Caesar was tied up. Hoenn and Lena decided to run away. But in the end, they were caught too. The police station immediately checked the hero's criminal past. It turned out to be clean. Hoenn admitted that he was seriously ill. For this reason, Caesar brought the priest, not knowing that he was a representative of the Dark Clan. The power that killed the unknown man on the street was intended for the protagonist. For what reason she struck another, Hoenn does not know. The investigator put forward his own version of events. He assumed that Hoenn was going to recruit the priest. For some reason, it didn't work out. Against this background, a dispute and an upcoming battle arose between Luverick and Caesar. And as a result of this, a completely innocent person suffered. Moreover, the police have a witness who can confirm this version. Hoenn realized that there was no way to get out of this situation. He has even come to terms with the fact that he will have to take a break from the game for a long time. The hero's dejected mood was immediately noticed by the investigator. He invited a witness to put an end to the investigation. And that witness, surprisingly, turned out to be an employee of the Adventurers Guild, Errol, the same one who recently became the main character's team's confidant. The woman entered the interrogation room and was surprised to find that the accused was Hoenn. She immediately told the investigator that there was a misunderstanding, and she refused to testify against the main character. Errol assured that Hoenn would not associate with witnesses to the end. His team recently solved the problem of adventurer killers, for which they received a reward. Right before the protagonist's eyes, the situation changed for the better. The charges were dropped. Hoenn received another 50 gold coupars for medical expenses. He thanked Errol sincerely, and she said that the main character will definitely become a special member of the guild. The woman's gaze made Lena wary, but Hoenn didn't pay attention to it. He felt tired after all these events. The boss's state of mind did not give Caesar any peace. Great, I decided to take his health seriously again. Hoenn tried to convince his subject that he was okay, but it was all in vain. Caesar grabbed the boss and carried him straight to the Church of the Order of Healers. Hoenn was left with no choice. Half an hour later, the main character's health was already being taken care of by priest healers. For a long time, a low-level member of the order tried to identify the disease. As a rule, the consumption of divine power depends on the severity of the disease. But this time, no matter how hard the priest tried, he could not find anything. And it was logical. The priest suggested that the protagonist's curse was so great that he could not cope with it. The enraged Caesar demanded that the member of the order do everything possible and impossible. At this time, the mid-level priest Elaine appeared. He noticed that Hoenn looked terrible and got to work. Divine healing power filled the space. But this priest was also in for a disappointment. He didn't feel sick either, and he decided that the hero's curse was incredibly strong. Never before had such a member of the order been encountered. Elaine decided that the high priest needed to be summoned. Lena started crying. She was afraid that the boss would die. Only the main character understood that the appearance of even the strongest of them would not solve anything. So he asked Elaine to talk to him alone. In the priest's personal library, Hoenn said that he did not want to disturb the highest representative of the order. He explained that he didn't want to make things worse. Caesar and Lena, who do not have a very good reputation, listen only to the main character. Even the Brahma police are unable to stop these two. If the high priest can do nothing and Hoenn dies, then the Order of Healers will be the first to be hit. Elaine was stunned. He thought that the protagonist was enduring the pain of the curse in order to restrain the bandits. Self-sacrifice for the sake of one's fellow man is most valued among the members of the Order. The main character was misunderstood again. He was already tired of explaining, so he decided to give up these attempts. But Elaine couldn't let Hoenn go that easily. He used divine power on the hero to slow the spread of the disease. Hoenn felt his body fill with energy. All the negative effects of overexertion were removed. And then the priest expressed a desire to join the main character's team. A healer is a must-have for any team. But to hire one like that, you have to pay a lot. Hoenn was sure that it was simply impossible to do this in the early stages of the game. But the system reported otherwise. A special situation allows you to hire a mid-level priest completely free of charge. Hoenn couldn't believe it was just luck, because it had been following him throughout the game. And this certainly couldn't have happened just because of charisma. Even after a long period of service to the Order, one can only count on a novice priest. But Elaine is on a whole other level. Hoenn assumed that this was a special treatment for former rankers. The guy was happy to accept Elaine into the team, but he was afraid that the game developers were involved. And they will definitely want to benefit. Hoenn made the decision to refuse Elaine. And he explained this by saying that the priest would not have enough determination to survive in his group. As soon as the main character left the church, Elaine and her assistants began to pray for him. He considered the main character to be very unhappy. Lena noticed that the boss looked better after talking to the priest. The team arrived at the tavern. Hohen's face lit up with Elaine's prayers. During dinner, the main character expressed dissatisfaction. His team is not up to any of the tasks. Caesar immediately blamed Lena for everything. The girl believed the reason was her health, and Hohen tried to explain to both of them that they shouldn't resort to violence all the time. You can get something out of nothing with the help of the basic and very important skill speech. And again, Lena must have it. To convey the truth to his subjects, Hohen decided to demonstrate everything. He called for the tavern owner, Tober. Having marked the large order, the hero activated eloquence and asked for a bonus for it. The owner of the establishment ordered the waiter to bring the guests a glass of drink at the house's expense. Hohen was glad that he succeeded, but Caesar again understood everything in his own way. He stood up and slammed the table, telling the tavern owner that the boss didn't mean it that way. Tober warned that he would call security if Caesar did not calm down. But Health continued. He said that the boss destroyed half the city, and the police let him go and even apologized. The tavern owner then realized that his customers were members of a new criminal organization. Tober decided that the protagonist team came to him for a reason. This tavern is important for the existence of other similar organizations. After these words, the criminals came out of the attic and all the dark corners. Hohen was stunned. Caesar decided to take over the tavern instead of the usual bonus. And Lena was glad to take part in this fight. The hero's subjects rushed to the attack. With one swing of his sword, Caesar shattered the floor of the tavern. Some of the criminals were also destroyed in a matter of seconds. The owner of the establishment ordered everyone to disperse, but Lena immediately approached him. Hohen still stood there stunned by how things had turned out. Some of the criminals tried to escape, but no one managed to get out. Half an hour later, the commotion in the tavern stopped. The protagonist's subjects left only Tober and a few of his subordinates alive. The tavern owner realized that he had made a mistake by engaging in battle with Hohen's team. The husband admitted that one could tell from the hero's face how cruel he was. Tober identified Lena's killer. As it turned out, the tavern's criminals belonged to the same organization that the girl left. But after the murder of a guild member, Lena is wanted by all the bandits. All this time, a criminal organization was following the main character's team. Consequently, those around him also consider Hohen a criminal. The main character crossed the line a long time ago, but only now did he admit it. And that is why he was forced to continue acting as a bandit. Hohen made the decision to leave no one alive. He asked Lena to sort everything out, but Tober began to beg for mercy. He promised that he would serve the main character, but Hohen understood that this was all just to save lives. Tober admitted that their organization is not doing well right now. They have a newcomer, a smart little fellow. He gained the trust of the organization's leaders and offered them a new business plan. The idea began to pay off. And after that, this tavern stopped bringing in income. Tober was left with nothing. That is why he is ready to easily accept the leadership of the main character. He believed that with a charismatic and frightening face like the boss and his destructive power, he could move mountains. Lena was tired of listening to this chatter, so she already brought her sword to strike. But Hohen immediately stopped her. He decided to accept Tober and his subjects. The main character only demanded an oath of allegiance. But he understood that soon the criminal organization would find the traitors and destroy them. The system assigned the tavern to Hohen's property. Now he can keep the profits for himself. Having his own territory, lackeys and subjects, the hero got the opportunity to create his own organization. Without thinking twice, Hohen chose the name Black Mountain Association. For this achievement, he received experience and skill points. Building an organization is a key element of playing as the boss class. Hohen told his subjects his main goal, to conquer the labyrinth. Lena was somewhat indignant, considering that this was not entirely criminal. But the main character said that he needed more than power and wealth. The labyrinth is filled with powerful monsters that no human can match in strength. Hohen isn't going to mess around with small change when he has a chance to fight the strongest. Charged with excitement, the main character's team left the establishment. And in the slums, the little pickpocket Ben had already learned about the tavern's capture. He is the one who created the imbalance in the criminal guild, the one Tober spoke about. The boy's subject is the strong warrior Thomas. And now, together with him, Ben decided to visit the enthusiastic tavern. The baby quickly reached the required area. There, a policeman immediately approached him and informed him that carrying large weapons was prohibited. This is related to the criminal activities of Hohen's team. Their stupid fame quickly grew. Everyone knows that these criminals were released by the police even after they were caught red-handed. In addition to this, the main character's team is an official member of the Adventurers Guild. And this shows that they are not so simple. After explaining the situation, the police officer asked Thomas to hand over the weapon. But the man had no desire to do this. The warrior, filled with rage, rushed to attack the policeman. Meanwhile, Hoenn was pleased with his achievements. The stupid glory of all the tavern workers was added to the stupid glory of the main character. Now the figure has exceeded 1,000 grams, and the Black Mountain Association has earned a reputation. Hoenn felt people's sidelong glances at him. In real life, he never dreamed of receiving so much attention. If the reputation reaches a certain value, then it moves to a higher level in the criminal world. But at the same time, other similar groups will try to destroy their competitors. Hoenn hoped to quickly grow the organization and earn a lot of gold. He knew for sure that his subjects would like this plan, and therefore their loyalty would only grow. The protagonist was afraid of repeating Rodrigo Eldrigo's failure in the previous game, and most of all, he strives to surpass his result. Fueled by this belief, Hoenn shouted that the Black Mountain Association would conquer the labyrinth. The hero strives to do the impossible and hopes that his subjects will support the boss. But both Caesar and Lena said that this was too much. For some reason, they were thinking very correctly now. There was no point in arguing with that. Hoenn himself knew that it was too early to even think about conquering the labyrinth. To begin with, you need to at least purchase a card. Suddenly, the main character received a message about an attack on the tavern. He knew it would happen, but he hoped not so soon. Ben and Thomas came to the tavern, which had recently become the base of the Black Mountain Association. They destroyed all the traitors except Tober. Ben was in a hurry to sort this matter out because he was acting without informing the criminal guild, and all because he has a grudge against the main character. And he hopes to deal with his enemy through Thomas's power. Tober noticed that the boy was carrying around a big guy everywhere, just like Hoenn, and he thinks that only inferior people do this. This remark made Ben really angry. The boy told Thomas that Tober had betrayed his comrades. The big guy's anger flared up. Tears poured from his eyes. Thomas charged at the tavern worker. However, at the last moment, Caesar appeared and knocked the weapon out of his hand. Ben froze in place in horror. The kid had a premonition that the new criminal organization was the one that had taken his gold. The boy remembered well the big guy who tied him upside down to a sword and carried him across the square. Caesar, in turn, also remembered the little scoundrel. He couldn't forgive him for humiliating his boss. By this time, Hoenn and Lena ran up to the tavern. Toma attacked Caesar. The blow was so strong that the protagonist's subject broke through the wall of the establishment with his body. And Thomas wasn't going to stop there. Ben felt the advantage, and Hoenn was seething with anger. He was ready to finish off the little bastard who had destroyed the base and was now threatening Caesar. Luckily, the main character was stopped by Lena. Hoenn shouted that his subject would not die from such a blow because he really wanted to believe it, but Ben insisted otherwise. Thomas, also known as the Piercing Wind, was once an adventurer. He managed to reach the depths of the labyrinth, but there he lost all his comrades. At the very threshold of the abyss, Thomas suffered defeat. The Piercing Wind did not want to die. Miraculously, he managed to escape death and get out of the labyrinth. But as soon as Thomas left the monster's lair, he was overcome with a feeling of guilt towards his comrades. This is what drove the warrior crazy. But Ben found a way to get through to him. He managed to subdue a maniac that even a guild of criminals couldn't handle. This guy earned the trust of the leaders, and now he was confident that he could take revenge on the main character and his subject. Indeed, Hoenn was very worried about Caesar, although he tried not to show it. Lena decided to help the boss. She noticed that while Thomas was dealing with Caesar, there was no one to protect the boy. The girl prepared to deal with the little rascal. Hoenn wanted to stop his subject, but he didn't have to. Thomas immediately pounced on the girl. A piercing wind grabbed the opponent by the head. Ben tasted triumph again, but it was too early to rejoice. Caesar woke up. He grabbed Thomas by the leg and stopped him from harming Lena. Then Health threw the enemy into the wall. He wanted to overcome the piercing wind himself. Thomas accepted the challenge. He projected all his fear onto Caesar's labyrinth. The warrior thought that when his health improved, he would get rid of the feeling of guilt towards his fallen comrades. The piercing wind's indicators increased to the maximum. He turned into a berserker. The protagonist began to worry that Caesar would not be able to cope with this enemy. The battle between the two giants has begun. Fearing for his subject, Hoenn asked Lena for help. The girl quickly refused, explaining that she specializes in hidden murders. Meanwhile, Thomas once again tried to strike the enemy. He failed to impress Caesar. However, the airflow from this attack managed to lift the health into the air. The main character became seriously agitated. Thomas prepared to use his deadly move, Hawk's Storm Rush. Thanks to him, Piercing Wind defeated many monsters in the labyrinth. The system alerted him to the danger. Thomas struck. A powerful cutting force reached Caesar's body. He flew out of the tavern with great force, breaking through the wall with his body. Hoenn couldn't believe it, and Ben was already savoring the victory. The little thief immediately focused Thomas's attention on Hoenn and Lena. He said the two simply watched their comrade die. A piercing wind prepared to attack. Then Lena took up the work. She immediately used the illusion. Thomas couldn't follow the girl's movements. Having chosen a convenient moment, Lena prepared to attack. But she failed to strike. At the last moment, Caesar's sword flew between the girl and Thomas. He repeated well that this battle belongs to him, and he won't allow anyone to interfere. With a creepy grin on his face, Caesar rushed towards his enemy. The hands of two strong warriors clasped in confrontation. The protagonist's subject began to put moral pressure on him. He said that there is no place for the weak in this world. Hoenn took it all personally. Lena also thought that Caesar was talking about the boss. Caesar then suggested that at the most crucial moment in the labyrinth, Thomas was betrayed by his comrades. Memories of the past echoed in the warrior's soul as a new wave of unbearable pain. Piercing Wind's despair reached its peak. This feeling literally burned Thomas. The rage was beyond what the warrior could handle. The main character couldn't believe his eyes. The fight with the irritated berserker at the very beginning of the game is very dangerous. Hoenn invested all his OP into Caesar, but was not sure that his subject would cope with this task. But he did it. Thomas spent all his strength and fell to his knees. And Caesar said that there is no point in killing yourself for your comrades at all. In such a situation, only a strong leader can save. It's only for the boss that it's worth risking your life. You can betray your comrades, but not your boss. Caesar's logic stunned Hoenn. After these words, Thomas felt as if he was struck by electricity. The protagonist's subject won the victory. The big guy's strength has increased significantly. He also received the talent Sustainability. Lena rejoiced at the victory like a child. And Hoenn noted that the reward for a quest of this level is too meager. Ben felt the worst at this time. The protagonist was proud of his incredibly competent subject. But a moment later, Caesar fell to the ground unconscious. While Health was unconscious, he had a terrible dream. Caesar won another victory in a difficult battle. But the boss was not happy. He noticed a wound on his subject and considered it a flaw. Hoenn wanted Caesar to emerge from the battle unharmed. And he said that the ability to be healthy, inappropriate behavior, and dirty work are not suitable for his organization. Then the main character fired the subject. This is what Health feared most of all. He couldn't believe that his boss had done this, so he decided that it was a dream. Caesar charged at Hoenn. But at the moment of impact, he came to his senses. Pushing away the horror, Caesar realized that he was in a hospital. There was no one nearby, only a note. In it, Hoenn reported that he was in the town hall. Around this time, the protagonist learned that Thomas was the owner of the slums in the Eastern District. According to the rules of the Labyrinth world, part of its territory was transferred to Hoenn. The consultant on these issues was Cled, an employee of the real estate department. The woman was not upset by Thomas's death at all. The warrior had many run-ins with the crime syndicate. Hoenn then realized that Ben had intended to take over the domain of the Piercing Wind. But the baby had already managed to take possession of half of the property. The boy felt sick from the main character's evil gaze. Hoenn was ready to kill the pickpocket thief with his own hands. But Ben promised that he would give everything to the main character and become his slave, just to stay alive. Cled led the protagonist to his new possessions. Thomas's mansion turned out to be very neglected. In addition, traps were set throughout the premises. Hoenn noticed the presence of traps in the first task in the labyrinth as well. But then Caesar was rushing ahead like a bulldozer, so there were no problems. The main character was happy that he now had property and his own territory. However, it is dangerous to use them now. Cled suggested tearing everything down and building from scratch. Hoenn liked the idea. Moreover, money is not a problem for him. He saw before him the new majestic base of the Black Mountain Association. All that's left is to wait for Caesar. He's really good at destroying everything around him. Thinking about the power of his subject, Hoenn couldn't help but grin. This expression on the hero's face was the most sinister. The size of the base also affects the strength of all members of the organization. At this time, Caesar was heading to the place indicated in the note. He couldn't get the terrible dream out of his head. The boss's words about a flawless fight without wounds were deeply imprinted in the subject's soul. Suddenly, in the main square of the city, a man named Malf approached Caesar. He is a representative of a martial arts school. Mouth was looking for students. To interest Caesar, he spoke of a flawless fight. And then he said that the recent battle between the two big guys that everyone was talking about was pathetic. And all because there were no martial arts there. These words made Caesar really angry. But then Health realized that this was his chance to live up to his boss's expectations. The protagonist, his team, and Cled were still in Thomas's mansion, waiting for Caesar. During this time, Lena taught Ben the art of killing. Surprisingly, the boy did much better than the boss himself. Cled's working day had long since ended. However, the City Hall employee was in no hurry to go home. This is what alerted the main character. He noticed that Thomas's property, that is the eastern part of the slums, was in a deplorable state, and the mayor's office did not influence the situation in any way. Previously, this was understandable because Thomas wandered through the vast expanses. However, after his death, nothing changed either. Hohen assumed that there was a reason Cled was accompanying the team outside of his working hours. He was afraid that Caesar had the reason. The woman is probably interested in the power of her subject and intends to use him for her own purposes. To avoid a direct answer, Cled said that she was still here out of her own interest. Lena was stunned. The main character did not quite understand what the woman wanted to say by this. In the 5th generation of the virtual game City Labyrinth, the dungeon level increased very quickly. However, players could collect various items to level up their character. In connection with this, many people began to get involved in farming. By killing the same monsters, players quickly increased their level. But then a gap appeared between the characters. Those who lagged behind in farming tried to level up with the help of martial arts. This brought good results. However, it was not possible to achieve the desired level. Caesar was a shining example of this. After visiting the training hall of the Art of 100 Steps, he did not find any worthy opponents. He warned well that he would destroy the dojo if he was not presented with a truly strong warrior. Malf had already regretted several times that he had brought this monster into the training room. Caesar got angry. Suddenly, another martial artist appeared in the hall. Hohen's subject hoped that he would become the same worthy opponent. But when Caesar approached, Health became frightened and began to cry. That was the last straw. Caesar had high hopes for this place, but in vain. Malf spoke so confidently that martial arts would help him stay alive. So now everyone will have to not die in battle against Caesar to prove the truth of these words. All those gathered were seized with inexpressible horror. Suddenly, one of the students couldn't stand it any longer and threw down a sign confirming the path. Until now, he had hoped that martial arts would help him improve his level. But the appearance of Caesar proves that all efforts are in vain. This Health is a beginner and already has the 15th level. Besides, he is just a subordinate. The fighters were scared to even imagine what level the boss of this monster had. In their minds, Hohen became a sick ranker who enjoyed killing weak players. The group's desperation reached its peak. But this is not what Caesar was aiming for. He grabbed the fighter who had renounced martial arts and said that it would not save him. Everyone will still have to demonstrate their strength. The fighters began to throw their signs one after another. And at that moment, the teacher appeared. Meanwhile, at Thomas's mansion, Lena sensed a threat to her boss. The unexpected statement from the City Hall employee alarmed the girl. Lena immediately pounced on Cled. Drawing her weapon, she warned him not to even try to court Hohen. And he didn't understand what the problem was at all. The hero's subject prepared to strike. But at the last moment, the boss stopped her. Lena decided that the boss liked Cled. Without thinking twice, the girl forced Hohen to choose one. The protagonist wanted to first impress Cled with his charisma, and then use his insight. This skill allows you to see what is hidden from the eyes. It is owned by truly strong people. But the situation took on new dimensions. To set things right, Hohen must make a decision immediately. The hero used a subjective view. But then everything began to look even more surprising. At this time, Coach Kato came to the 100-Step Art Dojo. The hall was immediately filled with his powerful energy. To crush the coach's spirit, Caesar stamped his foot and the floor around him cracked. Kato wanted to drive out Caesar and protect his students. He realized that his health would not go away just like that. So he applied the power of the art of 100 steps. A powerful energy was concentrated in Kato's hands and he directed it at Caesar. I realized that it would be impossible to avoid defeat by honest methods. The boss's words about a flawless fight without damage sounded in his head again. The solution appeared instantly. Caesar used a dirty trick and covered himself from the blow with the body of one of the fighters. When the dust from the attack cleared, Kato saw a terrible picture. His best student, Kangpeksu, was hurt. The coach was desperate. He wanted to know why Caesar had come here in the first place, and he explained that his goal was to study the ideal fight. However, now Health has seen that the teacher is not suitable for him. Caesar's curiosity disappeared, and he no longer wanted to waste his time. Cato breathed a sigh of relief, but in vain. Caesar had no intention of going empty-handed. He announced that from now on he would become the owner of the training hall. Cato couldn't resolve this. He ordered the disciples to defend their place, and they rushed to attack. Meanwhile, Hoenn tried to understand what women wanted from him. Lena said that she would obey the boss's decision, but she was really ready to finish him off for making the wrong choice. Only thanks to insight did the protagonist find out about this. Hoenn didn't understand at all why there was a need for these unnecessary verbal circles when everything could be said directly. Cled said that the boss was nothing special, but in reality she considered him completely ordinary. The women's logic drove Hoenn crazy. Because of the boss's indecisiveness, their curiosity dropped by one. The hero's psyche couldn't take it. And in the art hall, 100 steps away, a real brawl began. Caesar scattered martial arts students left and right. A few minutes later, the trainer himself was overcome by Health. Caesar's payroll has grown by 100. And the association's list, and in particular the main characters, is 50. After all the messages, Hoenn and his team went to the 100-step art training hall. There he saw devastation and demoralized soldiers. Cato just lay on the floor and lamented his unfortunate fate. Hoenn wanted to know what happened here, but received a wave of despair and tears. Cato said that all his students, including himself, were unable to leave even a scratch on Caesar. Now this dojo will be the worst in the area, but the main character didn't care about it. He came to apologize and report that his subject had done everything without permission. The boss of the Black Mountain Association himself is a very busy man with great ambitions. He does not have the opportunity to devote time to unprofitable places. Even though the owner of the doji had changed, Hoenn allowed the fighters to continue doing their business. Cato couldn't accept the Black Mountain boss's carefree language. He explained that the gym was doing poorly due to a lack of students. The other dojos lured everyone over to their side. And the thing is that they teach endlessly cruel methods of murder there. Somehow the art hall held on for 100 steps. But when people find out that all the students were defeated by some bandit, their reputation will be reduced to rubble. The fact that Caesar was perceived as a villain everywhere worried the protagonist greatly. Suddenly, Cato fell to his knees in front of Hoenn and began to beg for help. He was ready to kiss the boss's feet if only he would help the hall. But even Ben knew that such a bad location would only give the association a reputation for failure. All this terribly irritated the main character. To stop the coach's incessant begging, Hoenn promised that he would think of a way to help the gym. As a sign of gratitude, each student followed Cato and began kissing the boss's feet. Caesar did not return until late at night. Lena and Ben began to learn the art of the 100 steps. During the training, the girl learned that Caesar said something rather strange before leaving. He failed to quench his thirst for learning perfect combat. No one could have imagined that Health would be so interested in martial arts. Therefore, Cato recommended that Caesar go to the Chonhak Hall. Hoenn felt that something was wrong here. He used his class skill, insight, to understand Cato's intentions. And a second later, he ordered Lena to run after Caesar to the Chonhak Hall. The hero's subject is in danger. Chonhak Hall is located in the heart of Bram City. One of the teachers, Barden, hastened to inform the manager of his about Caesar's invasion. Several students and one trainer managed to overcome Health. After this, the attacker was caught. Chonhak was surprised by the fact that the attacker was called strong. Moreover, during the brawl, Caesar used the art of 100 steps technique. This fact could not go unnoticed by Igam Chonhak. Now he found a reason to meet with the trainer of the said art, Cato. At this time, Caesar was tied up and under the supervision of 2 students and a teacher. Everyone in this dodge already knew that it was Caesar who defeated Thomas, but it was hard to believe. The only one who could stand up to Thomas was the manager of the training hall, Igam Jonghak. This fact disappointed Caesar. Teacher Dabo became curious about what had happened to the boy Ben, who went everywhere with Thomas. And the big guy said that after cruel torture, the boss brainwashed the kid and then made him his slave. This was the last straw for the teacher's patience. Dabo decided to deal with Caesar here and now. But Health met this challenge with a smile on its face. Lena arrived at the last moment and repelled Dabo's attack. The girl completed the mission successfully. Caesar's eerie laughter spread throughout the room. He was glad to see his comrade. However, the rivalry between the two never went away. Caesar proposed a fight without injuries to determine who was stronger. But Lena was already confident of her superiority. She defeated everyone she met on her way to Caesar and remained completely unharmed. For a girl, such a battle is a common thing. Lena didn't understand why Health was walking around the training halls when it could learn everything from her. The girl's insolence angered Caesar. He broke the ropes on himself and insisted on a duel. Lena agreed on the condition that the loser would become the winner's dog. At this moment, both of them's attention was drawn to Teacher Dabo. He recovered from Lena's blow and was ready to defend his dojo even at the cost of his life. But in the eyes of the protagonist's subjects, he was not an enemy, but a scapegoat. The next morning, Lena and Caesar reported everything to the boss. Hoenn couldn't believe he was in such a mess. The subjects learned that the dojo of Chunghak was a huge criminal organization. They stirred up a hornet's nest. Lena treated Caesar like her toy, and all because he lost a bet to a girl, for one day only. In parallel with all these events, Tober was working on the reconstruction of the tavern. Even though Caesar had destroyed the establishment, the man was glad that they now belonged to Black Mountain. And all because Hoenn demanded much lower taxes and allowed independent management. Tober's dream came true. Now he can focus on preparing delicious food. Suddenly, the door of the establishment opened. Tober was delighted, thinking that this was the first customer. But it was little Ben who arrived. Barely catching his breath, the kid announced that Hoenn was calling all members of the organization. Tober and his comrades arrived at Thomas's mansion. But the boss wasn't there, just a note. Hoenn asked his subjects to destroy the mansion before his return. The hero himself was still in the 100 Steps martial arts training hall. An uninvited guest suddenly arrived there. The system alerted Hoenn to the danger. Kato immediately recognized the threatening energy of Chunghak. These two are bitter enemies. Chunghak could not forgive Kato for leaving the shared dojo and creating his own hall. In addition, he said that the master of the art of 100 Steps became a pawn of some rabble. These words touched the dignity of the protagonist and Caesar. Kato had his own reasons for hating his rival. Chunghak stole their master's secret weapon and then recruited real criminals into the dojo. The scoundrel justified his actions by saying that the master did not want to pass on his skills to anyone after Kato's escape. However, the trainer of the art of 100 Steps was sure that the reason was different. In the past, Chunghak led a dissolute lifestyle. The revelation of this fact was the last straw for Igum Chunghak's patience. He challenged his bitter enemy to a fight, and Kato accepted it. Chunghak managed to repel the first attack. However, Kato is not in the best shape now. Even the main character noticed this. The noise of the battle attracted the attention of the patrol police. Fights between players on the city streets are prohibited. The police were about to arrest the culprits, but stopped. On one side, the head of the largest criminal organization was looking at them. And on the other hand, the head of Black Mountain, whose payroll exceeded 1,000 even in the initial stages. The situation was very dangerous. People around, hearing about the incident, began to gather to watch the spectacle. The police focused on the safety of citizens. The situation has gotten completely out of control. Due to the large number of people gathered, Black Rock Mountain's reputation will change depending on the progress of the battle. And Hoenn understood that Kato was inferior in strength. Suddenly, Caesar activated eloquence and announced to everyone the flawless fight of the century. The main character did not understand what had come over his subject. It didn't take long to see people react. A whole crowd became interested in the upcoming fight, but the main figures seemed not to notice anything. Both wanted to end the feud and were convinced that one of them had to die. Kato prepared to attack. He used the first technique of Bakpo, Valiant Endeavor. A powerful blast of energy hit the enemy's neck, but he dissipated like a mirage. Chunghak used an illusion. Hiding behind the clouds, he penetrated the enemy's blind spot. Hoenn couldn't stand it and warned Kato about this. At the moment of the strike, the trainer of the art of 100 Steps managed to put up a block. Viewers expressed dissatisfaction with the protagonist's intervention. Caesar also thought that the boss was wrong to do this. Hoenn noticed something strange about Chunghak's attack. Kato felt it too. He immediately said that Igum had turned martial arts into some kind of nastiness. Obviously, Chunghak didn't like this comment. He assured that he had perfected the master's art and had managed to achieve infinity. To prove this, Igum used the fourth technique, Point Discharge. An energy of incredible power struck Kato straight in the heart. The audience was delighted. Chunghak didn't stop. He prepared for the next attack and stabbed the enemy in the back. Only now did Caesar understand what the boss meant. Kato predicted the blow and tried to dodge it. The timing was perfect, but it was injured. Caesar's curiosity about the perfect battle grew even more. He tried to grasp the truth by carefully observing the actions of both sides. Kato felt very bad, but he was glad that everything turned out this way and wanted to end it as soon as possible. Chunghak was going crazy in anticipation of victory. Kato began generating energy for the next attack. The enemy is not aware of this technique. Jong-hak guessed that the enemy was going to hit with an energy wave. To prevent the blow, he rushed into the attack first. But even this played into Kato's hands. The 100 Steps art trainer used a sacrificial technique that killed a person along with the enemy. The collision caused a bright light to flash. Nobody understood what had happened. Only Caesar laughed loudly. When the smoke cleared, everyone saw that Jong-hak had survived. Moreover, there was not a single scratch left on it. As if nothing had happened at all, Egom was ready to continue the fight, and he chose Caesar as his next opponent. It would be great if I didn't mind. He wanted to know how Jong-hak managed to avoid defeat. As Caesar came closer, Egom recognized the bandit who had broken into his dojo. Lena immediately admitted that she helped the healthy woman get out of there. But she was disappointed with the level of fighting skills of the members of the Jong-hak training hall. Not one of them was able to touch even a hair of hers. This statement angered Egom. The tension was building. Hoenn felt it was time to intervene. He introduced himself loudly but couldn't even finish his sentence. Jong-hak interrupted the hero and declared that he was not going to listen to some weakling. The boss's resentment affected Caesar like a detonator. Lena couldn't remain silent about this either. Both said that no one had the right to insult a sick boss. Jong-hak was somewhat stunned by this news. He speculated that Hoenn could not control his chi energy or it was flowing in the wrong direction. He even felt a little sorry for Kato, who was defending his sick boss. But nothing can be changed now. The situation has gone too far. Jong-hak declared war on Black Mountain on behalf of Dojo. Caesar and Lena accepted the challenge. The audience was also delighted. The decline in the reputation of the main hero's organization was halted until the decisive battle. The system reported that during the war, Hoenn could capture enemy factions and expand his territory. To think things over, the protagonist and his subjects returned to the tavern. Hoenn demanded an explanation from Caesar. He did not understand why his subject had gone so far. He admitted well that he did everything for the sake of learning the perfect fight. And it doesn't just mean dodging to avoid getting hurt. Caesar was truly captivated by Jong-hak's skill, who managed to survive Kato's sacrificial technique. The desire to become healthier was close to madness. Because of him, Hoenn's plans are ruined. The main character was in a bad mood. He decided to quit the game. Hoenn's head started to hurt from the tension. He was terribly hungry, so he went to the nearest canteen. There the main character met his friend, Ranker Barden. Hoenn ate in silence for a while. Thinking about the state of the game brought tears to my eyes. It wasn't easy for Barden either. He mentioned the previous generation of the game and the achievement of the protagonist character, Rodrigo Eldrigo. Hoenn had a good influence on the game. He inspired others with his dedication. But that was in the past. Now a new game has begun. The protagonist was forced to leave her to gather information. Barden is an intern at the Korean branch of the developer of the game, Labyrinth World. He tries very hard to follow the right path. That's why Hoenn didn't talk about his activities. The hero was ashamed to admit that his character was a criminal. But unexpectedly, Barden revealed that he was also a member of a criminal organization. The guy was only outraged that his leader, Jong-hak, had put his dojo on the line. Hoenn's mood improved dramatically. He came up with a way to use this information in the game. The new generation of virtual reality has been thought out down to the smallest detail. To keep people playing, nutrition, training, health, and other packages were created. In virtual life, people have received unlimited possibilities. This is how the idea of creating a new perfect world arose. And Hoenn has already managed to test all of its capabilities on himself. Returning to the game, Barden pondered how to win the war. He couldn't let Jong-hak lose, because then the secret weapon would be exposed. The man completely forgot that his life could also be in danger. He was walking quietly late at night when Lena appeared next to him. After some time, Barden was already tied up. Thus, Hoenn was going to find out about Jong-hak's secret weapon. Barden resisted. Lena wanted to force the fat man to talk, but her boss stopped her. The protagonist did not want to cause a second pain from real life, but he really wanted to emerge victorious. Hoenn pressed Barden, saying that his leader had been blinded by the authorities. Jong-hak spat on everyone, but Barden did not give in. He noted that a martial artist must strive for incredible strength. Otherwise, it will be difficult to survive in this world. Barden also said that the main character has lost his gamer spirit. He walks around with a strong character and earns experience without doing anything. These words were deeply embedded in Hoenn's mind. Caesar set to work. He put his sword to the hostage's neck and declared that he was no longer interested in martial arts. Only then did Barden agree to tell about Jong-hak's secret weapon. After some time, the heroes moved to the training hall of the Art of 100 Steps. Barden explained that the essence of Chonhak's power lies in the strong concentration of chi energy in a certain part of the body. This turns the hand into a sword. Barden immediately demonstrated the technique. It is almost impossible to determine the range of such an attack. Usually a person who is focused on using chi energy quickly loses strength and agility. However, with Chonghak, things are different. He managed to overcome his shortcomings. Egum has excellent reflexes and is very good at dodging attacks. His skill is almost perfect. Everyone who entered into battle with Chonhak immediately regretted it. Thanks to the deceptive technique, the opponents could not even touch Egum. There is only one way to win. You need to be more agile than Chonghak. Among the members of the protagonist's team is Lena. The girl was very happy. But Hoenn still believed that only Caesar could stand up to the enemy. Lena is already wanted by a criminal guild. If she takes part in a public duel, she will attract a lot of attention. Besides, Caesar will be angry. The main character again did not know what was the best thing to do. Lena has already started studying the art of Chonghak, and she did it well. Hoenn tried to refuse the girl, reminding her that the enemy was very strong. But Lena assured that she was not afraid of death and was ready to risk her life for the sake of her boss. Moreover, she hopes to win and become the first among the subjects of Hoenn. Only now the main character realized that in this way, Lena was trying to express herself to the fullest. Hoenn thought about it, and Caesar dealt with Barden without hesitation. Once again, the big guy did it his way. Meanwhile, construction of the main Black Mountain base on the site of Thomas's mansion was being completed. Cled watched the process closely the whole time. The woman secretly reported the situation to her boss, In Young, and he was not at all happy that Black Mountain was going to take over other criminal organizations. Injan could not allow this, and so ordered Cled to continue observation and report everything. There is 1 day left before the war. Both sides were preparing. After Caesar and Lena's invasion, the Chonghak dojo lost many of its people. Besides, Egum believed that Barden had betrayed him. A member of the criminal guild Tarian, who collaborated with Chonghak, had the same opinion. She believed that Barden's disappearance could somehow influence the outcome of the war. Egum hired the fat man for political purposes, and therefore did not worry at all about his art. Chonghak was even glad not to see Barden, because he had witnessed the shameful past of the dojo leader. The only thing Egum thought about was Caesar's strength. This character can cause trouble. In the 100 Steps Art Training Hall, Hoenn gathered all the fighters. The mood of those gathered was depressed. They didn't believe in victory. But the main character reminded us of the power of the Black Mountain. He was ready to win by any means necessary. The fact that the enemy was a criminal organization gave Hoenn free rein. The hero activated boss charisma and eloquence and declared that everyone should obey him. Realizing that not everyone could come to terms with the new leader, Hoenn allowed those who wanted to leave. He didn't want extra people to interfere with the implementation of the big plan. Caesar will be enough for him to win the war. One of Cato's students decided to take advantage of the opportunity. But when he approached the exit, Caesar's dagger immediately hit him. It's great that the boss's words were misunderstood. To leave the boss is to die. Of course, that's not what Hoenn meant, but he didn't object. Although this crowd would not be able to make a major contribution to the war, the hero planned to use them. The next morning, many people gathered in the main square of the city, wanting to watch the battle. Chonhak, his subjects, and Coach Dabo were already waiting for Black Mountain. Ego sought to destroy the dojo of the Art of 100 Steps. Only Tarian didn't understand the reason for such an obsession. She thought that everything would end after Cato's death, but it didn't. Something still bothered Chonhak. Soon, representatives of Black Mountain arrived on the scene. Hoenn immediately ordered Lena to act. The girl approached Chonhak without warning. The enemy dodged the blow. He was convinced that he had managed to avoid admonition. But a moment later, it turned out that Lena had managed to wound the enemy. Chonghak recognized his fighting style and was convinced that Barden had betrayed him. Taking advantage of the moment, Lena attacked again. But this time, Chonghak accurately dodged the blow. Moreover, he prepared to hit the girl in the head. Lena covered herself from the blow. But a second later, she felt that the enemy had attacked her in the stomach. Hoenn didn't have time to notice when Egum changed the target of his attack. The enemy predicted the girl's actions and acted ahead of the curve. The worried protagonist asked Caesar for help, but Lena immediately objected. She asked the boss to wait a little longer. This situation was painfully familiar to Chonghak. Once he also tried to prove his skills to the master, the memories made Egum freeze for a moment, and Lena took advantage of this chance and attacked. Hoenn brought in Caesar, but Dabo came out to meet his health. The two met in battle for the second time. The main character's tension reached its peak. Jonghak took Jungle's sword in his hands. This weapon greatly increases damage, speed, and attack range. Lena was injured again. Now the chances of winning have been significantly reduced, but the girl did not give up and again rushed into the attack. Lena was unable to withstand the enemy's strengthening. She fell to the ground. Jonghak prepared to deliver the decisive blow. Intuitively, Hoenn rushed to help his subject. But then Caesar managed to intervene. He stopped the enemy's sword by grabbing the blade with his hand. It was the technique of the art of 100 steps, the rite of expulsion. With a light, casual movement, Caesar disarmed the enemy. Then he grabbed him by the throat and activated the choke technique. Hoenn couldn't believe his eyes. He had no idea that his subject possessed the art of 100 steps. Even Jonghak's dodge is powerless against the big guy's skill. Caesar understood the true essence of the 100-step martial art. The hero's subject threw Jonghak to the ground with incredible force. Hoenn was shocked by what was happening. Caesar told everyone that he had demonstrated the true essence of the art of the 100 steps. And then he made an announcement about recruiting students for the dojo for 10 silver kupari. At this moment, Hoenn noticed that the fighters from the warring sides were squeezing each other's hands. Shortly before these events, students Kato and Jonghak met. In everyday life, they saw no reason for enmity. So, while the leaders of both sides were sorting things out, their students decided to talk over lunch. Jonghak's henchmen learned that Kang Baeksu had abandoned his comrades. He was too deeply affected by the loss of his teacher Kato, and the rest didn't feel very well either. All the students of the art of 100 steps admitted that it would be better to move on to Jonghak. Nothing has improved in their training room. Only the color of the uniform has changed. Noticing that the fight between Caesar and Ego was ending, the men decided to disperse. They agreed that if necessary, the fights would be softer towards each other. Hoenn noticed the handshake moment, and he didn't like it at all. The main character understood well that the war did not start for the sake of destruction. Its goal is to capture enemy territory. It is better for both sides to remain intact. But Hoenn could not tolerate betrayal. The martial arts students froze in fear before the enraged image of the protagonist. Lena noticed that the boss now looked like Caesar. A moment later, the big guy himself appeared. He reminded that only death awaits traitors. The soldiers' fear of the hero's subject was so great that they immediately prepared for battle. All members of the 100 Steps Art Dojo activated their skills, but it never came to a fight. Jonghak shouted for everyone to stop. He admitted his defeat. In fact, it was Barden who pushed him to join the criminal guild of Egom. He assured that it would be beneficial from every point of view. Dabo was categorically against it. He couldn't just spit on principles. Then Jonghak decided to listen to Barden and entrusted the negotiations to him. I still couldn't calm down. Egom wanted to believe that he was doing the right thing. He left his master Chono long ago and opened his own dojo. The business quickly gained popularity as Jonghak abandoned traditions and taught practical techniques. He had learned from his own experience that warriors bound by principles could achieve nothing. The pressure of the labyrinth monsters is rapidly growing, and criminal organizations that hunt people are lurking in the city. And all those who adhere to principles and traditions continue to sit at their dojos. They are trying to escape from reality. Jonghak created the dojo in defiance of this, and he did not hold those who did not agree with this opinion. Despite their differences of opinion, Dabo remained with Egom. He continued to train fighters with even greater zeal. And later, Jonghak realized that Barden was trying to get to the top of the criminal guild, and he didn't like it. Egom explained that there is no desire to cooperate with those who are chasing a handful of power. He had gone too far, and now he didn't understand if this was the right path. After defeating Kato, Jonghak felt terrible. But it was only after the defeat that he fully realized how wrong he had been. Egom made a pact with criminals to retrain such scoundrels through a promise to the master. But then Caesar burst into the dojo and ruined everything. Jonghak was forced to fight against Kato, and it was all in vain. Egom never forgot his promise to the master, but he didn't even notice how he was subjected to rage. He thought he could handle it, but he was wrong. Now, after the public defeat, all candidates will go to Black Mountain. This means that Jonghak's dojo has disappeared. Egom couldn't continue to fulfill his promise to the master, so he asked Hoenn to do it in his place. Meanwhile, the construction of the main base of Black Mountain was completed, and Kled was very pleased with this. Word of BlackRock's victory spread quickly. The organization's reputation increased by 300, Hoenn's by 1,000, and Caesar's by 650. Great, as the best participant in the fight, I received a new trait, martial arts genius. At this time, outside the Labyrinth City, the assassin archer Heifel was waiting. A few days ago, he accidentally bumped into Lena. The husband shot an arrow at the girl, but was unable to even wound her. Lena reacted instantly and caught the weapon, and then she immediately threw it in the direction of the archer. To hide, Heifel used temporary invisibility. He was amazed at the speed of the girl's reaction. Now Heifel is heading to the Labyrinth City. He received an assassination order from Barden. Fatso returned to the game thanks to a one-time immunity. He received this opportunity as a gift from the Korean branch of the company that developed the Labyrinth City. Barden had to pay a lot for Heifel's services, but he hoped that it would solve the problem. The main character moved with all his subjects to the rebuilt mansion. Before this, Hoenn bought buffs for this base. They strengthened every member of the group, and from the very first days there were some damages. While trying to master the art of Junghak, Ben accidentally damaged the floor. The main character was simply mad with rage, but the boy claimed that he did not do it intentionally. Lena wanted to teach people martial arts together with Caesar, but the main character left her to look after a little thief. This irritated her greatly. Lena demanded an explanation, beating her boss. And Hoenn admitted that he just didn't want to send her where there were a lot of men. Ben was amazed. He thought that the main character thought through everything down to the smallest detail. Not everyone can withstand Caesar's training. Most will simply leave once they realize where they are. But those who remain will become real monsters. While thinking about this, Ben noticed Hoffel aiming at the boss. The kid warned Hoenn about the danger. But the main character didn't even have time to turn around before an arrow pierced his chest. The system reported a critical condition. If Hoenn experiences additional damage, his real body will go into shock. Having learned the latest news, Barden was beside himself. He hired Heifel to kill Caesar. But for some reason, the archer shot at the main character. Soon the same archer killer came to Barden's sewer cache. He found out that Hoenn was Caesar's boss, so he shot him. Although in reality, the reason was completely different. When Lena was put on the wanted list, Heifel got to work. But he couldn't kill the girl. This was the first defeat of the human hunter. And when he saw how that same Lena was hanging around Hoenn, he felt envy. That's why he shot the main character. Barden understood everything from Heifel's gaze. But that didn't make it any easier for him. The archer killer threatened the fat man, but did not intend to harm him. Attacking a person associated with the top 6 ranks is very dangerous. Heifel assured that he would deal with Lena and Caesar and left. Barden's plans went down the drain. He understood that this time Black Mountain could catch Heifel. And then the enemies will contact the customer. Barden decided to use the powers of the 6 stronger ones to prevent exposure. During this time, the main character had already been delivered to the Temple of Salvation. A mid-level priest, Elaine, worked on his healing. Hoenn's condition quickly returned to normal. Lena was so nervous she couldn't understand herself. Although the main character insisted that there was no point in making such a fuss, in fact, due to the poor synchronization, Hoenn didn't feel much pain. But as usual, no one believed him. Elaine was worried that the ancient curse would begin to progress. Lena was again overcome with the fear of losing her boss. Hoenn didn't want his subjects to believe this nonsense. However, the priest's words had an untold impact. Lena was even more upset that her boss didn't tell her anything about his illness. The girl's loyalty has decreased by 10 units. The priest wanted to settle the situation and tried to explain that the boss was thus taking care of his subjects. But it didn't help at all. Lena's loyalty dropped by another 5. Hoenn panicked. He tried to think of something to calm the girl down. If Lena leaves the protagonist, all the women in town will think he is a terrible guy. And he won't be in good health in the men's bathhouse either. So Hoenn decided to do something he didn't want to do. He grabbed the priest by the barges and blamed him for the situation. Elaine warned that in case of an attack, the Knights of the Temple would respond. And then the main character and his people will have a hard time. Not wanting to attract unnecessary attention and get into trouble, Hoenn let the priest go. But he took the healing necklace from Elaine and gave it to Lena. This item is magical and can restore the owner's health. The girl really liked the gift. And Elaine couldn't believe that the main character resorted to stealing. But a second later, I realized that it was for the best. If the priest himself had given the necklace to the protagonist, it would have been explained as a conspiracy with a dark organization. The Knights of the Temple would have reacted immediately. But the theft of a necklace is not enough to initiate an internal investigation. Hoenn didn't even think about it. His actions were once again perceived in the best light. Elaine believed that the protagonist had thought it all out and done it on purpose. He believed that such an attentive boss could not be found in the whole city. The priest's loyalty increased by 15 points, and Hoenn still didn't understand how it happened. Suddenly, Lena declared that she would not accept the gift. She wanted her boss to ask her to take the necklace again. And if it weren't for the priest's hint, Hoenn would have guessed about it. The happy girl danced with joy. Her loyalty immediately increased to 25. After this, the boy Ben reminded Hone about Heifel's attack. All this time, Caesar was busy training fighters in the dojo. Everyone who came there has already regretted it 100 times. It was almost impossible to withstand the load of the big guy. And Caesar didn't allow anyone to leave the training hall either. He noted that martial arts without basic strength are just a name. To make the fighters get up and work further, Health took up the sword. In panic, the students began to run in all directions. And at that moment, Caesar felt a sharp and burning pain in his chest. Heifel used his invisibility skill and infiltrated the dojo. He hit the protagonist's subject with an arrow at a critical point. Caesar suffered 50% damage. Enraged, Health swung his sword to teach his attacker a lesson. But Heifel was not afraid at all. This position of the big guy opened all the critical points, and the archer prepared to shoot a second time. However, Caesar used the wind power of the 100-step martial art. Heifel realized that the arrow's trajectory would now change. But before he could blink, Caesar was approaching. With one blow, he smashed the enemy's crossbow. The force of the blow was incredibly great despite the injuries. Heifel resorted to invisibility. He hoped to penetrate Caesar's blind spot and deliver a fatal blow. But Health managed to grab the enemy, despite invisibility. He did it thanks to his intuition. At the moment of impact, 6th-rank assassins approached the training hall. Everyone understood that the enemy was not simple, since even their forces were involved. But it was precisely this kind of struggle that aroused the curiosity of the best killers. Caesar was going to kill Heifel, but decided to ask him where he came from. The archer said it didn't matter, because the big guy was being hunted by the 6th rank. And they are very interested in the protagonist's subject. Caesar's oversecurity brought disaster upon himself, and he would eventually die. The local criminal organizations are too deeply rooted here, and they won't let a newcomer ruin everything. Even those who tried to keep their distance from each other came together for a common goal. At this moment, the criminals in question appeared. 6th-rank assassins: Velet, Rune, Dwarf, Franken, Zeman, and Joe's Tongue. The lady in the red rune attacked first. She hit Caesar with fireballs. Then the sharp-tongued Joe rushed into the attack. But he failed to reach the big guy, who defended himself with a sword. Zeman was the next to use his powers. He used the destructive dark swords and threw them at the protagonist's subject. Caesar repelled the attack again. In response, he threw down his sword. But Velet, holding the column in his hand, stopped the weapon. Immediately after this, Zeman launched an attack. And this time, Caesar could not avoid the defeat of the dark swords. The striker admitted that he was disappointed. He decided that the rumors about a monster from Black Mountain that was on par with the so-called players were a lie. Zeman explained that the purpose of their visit was to recruit Caesar. If his health fails, he will die on the spot. But Caesar said that there was no point in hoping for that. He had obeyed and would obey only one man. The attackers assured that the boss of Black Mountain was already dead. To prove this, Dwarf activated his film skill and showed the moment Hoenn was hit by the arrow. Rage took over Caesar's mind. He activated Berserker mode and was about to send the villains after the boss. The battle flared up again. Meanwhile, Hoenn, Lena, and Ben tried to track down Heifel. Ben has good skills in detecting traces. Using his sense of smell, the baby came across a trail. There were many suspects, since there were bad rumors about Hoenn. Suddenly, Ben smelled a strong sewer smell. He instantly used the skill 4 seconds backpo. The fiery energy explosion found the invisible Heifel. Thus, the main character managed to catch the hired killer. The tied-up archer admitted that he shot Hoenn because he was tired of watching him flirt with Lena. But the fact that the main character was able to survive turned out to be a big surprise. Heifel's arrows kill even high-ranking monsters from the labyrinth. So the archer was very surprised. He admitted that the main character is not as simple as he seems. Hoenn decided to get down to business. He asked who ordered the murder and what his goals were. Heifel declined to answer, but Lena was ready to make the archer talk. Heifel only reported that Caesar should already be dead. By now, the protagonist's subject was indeed seriously wounded. The criminal attackers began to laugh at Caesar's defeat, but after a few seconds, the health increased. He didn't understand one thing. Why didn't the enemies deal the fatal blow? The fact is that their leader Zeman still hoped to lure Caesar to his side. The leader of the Six, who came from the Eastern continent, the destroyer of souls, was very interested in Hoenn's subject. But Caesar once again assured that he would not bow his head before the boss's killers. Then the villains rushed into the attack again to complete the massacre. At this point, Caesar used the deadly technique of the art of 100 steps, the ultimatum. No one in the audience expected such a turn of events. Franken, a subject of one of the 6 great ones, the vampire Israk, decided to accept this attack. He knew that self-destruction could only be defeated by self-destruction. The main character immediately received a notification from the system about the activation of this skill by Caesar. Hoenn felt a shudder run through him. He had invested his entire gaming life into this character and didn't want to lose it anymore. The protagonist knew that Caesar had to be prevented from using his skill, but he was too far away from his subject. Hoenn's eyes filled with tears of despair. Meanwhile, Franken, who had approached Caesar, flew away from him at a furious speed. Then the villains noticed that strangers had entered the room. 4 of Caesar's allies prevented him from using his self-destructibility. It was these people that he took away his health during his crazy training. Even Zeman knew one of them, Saito, because he managed to become famous in the labyrinth. Now the criminals realized that dealing with Black Mountain is not so easy. Caesar's ability activation was interrupted. The allies entered the battle. Zeman realized that they could not cope with the 4 monsters raised by Caesar. The leader of the group decided to retreat, and the main character was already standing at the exit. Zeman was stunned. He knew for sure that Hoenn was dead. The leader of the attackers instantly used arrows of darkness and threw it at the protagonist. Before Hoenn could blink, he was once again moments away from death. But at the last moment, Lena saved him. The girl gave the boss a good slap in the face, and he didn't even think about dodging the arrow. Thus, the dangerous attack missed its target. Zeman did not notice this maneuver of the girl, and therefore believed that Hoenn himself dodged. However, the attacker still could not understand how this was possible with such a frail body. Caesar was incredibly happy when he saw his boss alive. He decided that the attackers, instead of killing Hoenn, had hit his acupuncture point. Thus, the protagonist's absolute martial art was awakened. Only it wasn't true, and Hoenn knew it very well. The main character was also very happy that Caesar was alive. He finally breathed a sigh of relief. Once the fear for his precious subject had disappeared, Hoenn turned his attention to the state of the training hall. It was 75% destroyed. Enraged, the protagonist declared that the 6 ranks must compensate for the damage. Moreover, he also wanted an apology. Zeman was stunned, but he liked the impudence of the main character. Only after this did the group's leader reveal his identity. It turns out that he is one of the 6 ranks, namely the head of the dark sect Ancient Things. On his own behalf, Zeman invited Hoenn to a meeting of the 6, which will take place in 4 days. And he noted that failure to appear would be regarded as treason. After this, the members of the 6 will destroy Black Mountain. Only Caesar was pleased with this statement. He believed that the boss had thought of everything and was going to force the 6th rank to kneel before him. However, in Hoenna's mind, things looked far from that. Once again, events took an unexpected turn. Against this background, the main character learned about the attempt on his life. Luckily, Ben reminded me of this. Typically, if a player becomes the leader of a large criminal organization, he becomes a target for other criminals. And so it will be until the end of life, or until the player destroys the person who ordered the murder. That's why Hoenn continued searching. At this time, Barden had already learned that the subjects of the 6th rank had not been able to cope with Caesar. He no longer knew what to think of to defeat that monster. But I didn't have to think long. Caesar and Hoenn burst into Barden's sewer cache. Thanks to Ben's ability to track tracks, the protagonist found the person who ordered the murder. And he was stunned when he found out it was Barden. Hoenn saw with his own eyes how Caesar killed the fat man. This means that this person took advantage of the moderator's buff. The protagonist also guessed that Barden is an informant for one of the 6 ranks, Sujono Shuen, and then he confessed to the fat man who he was. Barden and Hoenn have known each other for a long time. The fat man often asked the main character for advice. Thanks to this, he was able to stay in the gaming space for a long time. However, things have not been easy for Barden since Hoenn left his job as a ranker. The fat man admitted that he tried to kill the main character to prevent mass bloodshed. But he forgot that he himself was part of a criminal organization. Barden reported that Cled from the real estate department was subject to the 6th rank, and she spied on the actions of the main character. Fatso started working for Sujono Shuen after the gaming company announced layoffs. He lent money to dishonest gamblers. Barden made money from interest. Everything was going great until Black Mountain appeared. Because of Hoenn and Caesar, the number of criminals began to decrease sharply. Accordingly, Barden's profits also decreased. Everything went down the drain again. After this confession, Hoenn realized that he had been used for a long time. Barden relied on the hero's advice. But the main character did not understand the essence of such a game. The main thing for him is that it is interesting. Caesar prepared to finish off the fat man a second time. But in desperation, he asked to join Hoenn's company. And in vain. The main character refused his comrade, but he saved his life. The paths of these two players diverged. Thanks to Barton, the main character received a lot of money and valuable information. Now Hoenn focused his attention on becoming stronger. There is a merchant in the game series Labyrinth World. He trades information on the location of high-end weapons and other things. To meet him, you need to reach a high level. And the main character is going to do this by meeting with the 6 ranks. He believes that the strength accumulated by Caesar will be sufficient for the battle. After these events, members of the Black Mountain organization had to defend themselves from another attack by criminals. The attackers were dealt with without much difficulty. Hoenn and his subjects returned to the main base. The priest Elaine was waiting for them there. He healed wounded soldiers. The presence of this person on the territory of the criminal base somewhat stunned Hoenn. Suddenly, Elaine announced that the boss was expected. In the back of the room stood a charming lady in a mask. The priest did not hide his admiration for her beauty. At first, Hoenn did not recognize the guest, but after a few minutes he realized that this was the merchant the hero had recently remembered. But why is she here? While Hoenn was pondering, Caesar took action. He instantly approached the saleswoman and ordered her to introduce herself. In addition to this, her health advised her to hurry if she valued her life. The lady in the mask was not used to this kind of treatment. Even high-level players bow before her. Then the priest decided to intervene. He activated his power and bound Caesar in healing chains. The motionless health flew into the air. Elaine then fell to his knees in front of the traitor Laura and confessed his feelings. Lena realized that it was time to bring the priest back to his senses. The girl moved closer to give Elaine a kick, but as soon as she swung, she immediately flew away from Ben's activated power. Only after this did the boy admit that Laura was his adopted mother. It turned out that the woman in the mask was engaged in more than just trading. By selling information, she tried to stop countless deaths and reduce the number of orphans. In the previous generation of the game, she imitated Rodrigo Eldrigo. This legendary player helped children and gave them the most expensive medicine. Following his example, Laura also opened an orphanage. But even this could not heal the children's wounds from the war. The harsh reality has turned them into vagabonds of the lowest order. Some ended up in criminal guilds. Even Rodrigo Eldrigo ended up using children to navigate the labyrinth. So Laura decided to change tactics. Ben was overcome with emotion. He felt unwanted and abandoned again. Hoenn already thought that the merchant had come for her son, but the matter was different. She was sent to the main character from above, and the purpose of this visit is punishment. Laura received and activated the magic sphere. A pixelated creature with the silhouette of a human emerged from it. None of those gathered knew what it was. The creature also did not understand what was happening. At that very moment, Lena and Caesar burst into the main character's personal office. They sensed danger. Great, he immediately put his sword to the pixel creature's neck. But she used her own energy to defend herself and threw away Caesar's sword. Then Lena threw a dagger at the creature. However, the pixel body seemed to swallow him. The creature became angry at the unreasonable hostility. Hoenn tried to find out from the merchant the essence of much of the punishment, but she was not going to explain. Suddenly, Lena warned the main character about the danger. But with his weak body, Hoenn was unable to dodge the pixel creature's attack. Caesar reacted and threw his cloak over the attacker. He hoped to tie up the strongest enemy. At this time, Hoenn received a message that his body had not received any damage from the attack. Only the main character's resources have decreased. The pixel creature's gaze penetrated even through Caesar's cloak, and he stopped right at health. Hoenn couldn't believe it, but his incredible subject was trembling before an unknown creature, and this means that it has a threatening force. The protagonist understood everything. The pixel creature is the same player as Hoenn. Due to the excessive increase of one of the skills, this person received a divine curse. Since then, the player, named, has turned into a pixelated creature that follows orders. And it, despite having many chances, did not kill Hoenn. This means that the punishment consists of depleting the hero's financial resources. Hoenn had heard about this before. Players under the curse can be restored using funds invested in them. The loss of resources by the protagonist is inevitable, so he came up with a way to use this to his advantage. He decided to hire a creature that even Caesar himself fears. But the damned player didn't like the proposed salary amount. The pixel creature got angry again. The walls and ceiling began to collapse from her energy. Hoenn felt that if he didn't resolve the situation immediately, he would have to invest resources into the base again. The protagonist doubled his sadness, and surprisingly, the pixel creature agreed. Meanwhile, Ben tried to find out from his mother why Caesar was trembling in front of the damned player, but she only said that it was completely normal. The protagonist coped with the punishment, but the strength of his base dropped to 89%. Hoenn received a slave, and this creature was ready to carry out even the most pitiful orders, such as bring and bring. Then the merchant Laura said that if you remove the remaining curse, you can get a strong ally. But you have to pay for information on how to do this. Hoenn hadn't expected anything else from the merchant, but he was still upset. This person takes advantage of the troubles of others to make money. She knows about all the city's income and expenses. The protagonist checked his account. Base construction and wars had greatly depleted his resources. If Hoenn acquires the information, he will be left without any money. The only way out is to sell Ben, but the main character couldn't do that to a child. There was no way out. Hoenn refused the expensive information. To make the hero change his mind, Laura reminded him of the meeting with the 6 ranks. But even then, Hoenn did not change his mind. After all, it's much more interesting to play without knowing the future. Surprisingly, Laura continued to persuade the hero to acquire the information. She was even willing to give it to him on credit. And then Hoenn realized that the merchants wanted something from him. The day of the meeting with the 6 ranks has arrived. Zeman reported to the leader, the Destroyer of Souls, that Black Mountain had arrived. They also learned that the organization's fortune was growing exponentially. The fact is that the main character intercepted Sujon Schwen's income stream. Barden warned that Black Mountain would very quickly begin to threaten the 6 ranks. But the Destroyer of Souls, like Zeman, were convinced that this would not happen. Hoenn was invited to a meeting to decide his fate. If the main character proves his worth, he will become one of the 6. Otherwise, he will die. As he approached the meeting place, the protagonist became increasingly agitated. However, his subjects Lena and Caesar felt as usual and did not stop arguing. Hoenn got some information from Laura, and even the highest merchants did not know the most important thing: the true intentions of the Destroyer of Souls. And he can easily get rid of Hoenn at this meeting. The main character felt as if he was walking to certain death, but his subjects were convinced of the opposite. Caesar and Lena believed that the boss had discovered the ultimate martial art and would be able to withstand all 6 ranks. Luckily, Hoenn had a different plan. He intended to use the meeting as an opportunity to secure a top 6 spot. This means that Black Mountain will attack first. It is known that the more important the information, the more encrypted it is presented. Using her skill, Laura showed Hoenn a scene from a special event. 9 years ago, the head of the 6 ranks was betrayed and killed. Before this event, he was planning to leave the criminal business for the sake of his little daughter, Penny. The girl was left an orphan. The head subjects decided to use Penny as a puppet. The girl grew up. She continued to prepare the medicine that brought her family wealth during the war. She didn't intend to continue living like this. She wanted revenge. And for this, Penny asked Phanam, one of her father's subjects, for help. First, the girl made all her enemies believe that she was dead. And then, with the help of Phanam, she poisoned them at their next meeting. In the last seconds of their lives, the villains realized that Penny was still alive. Only she could prepare such a powerful poison. From that moment on, the girl's revenge began. Penny's father was committed to helping people ease their suffering. However, the 6 ranks made him a criminal. That is why the girl was going to fast for him first. The stage display and transmission of information ended. Hoenn was stunned. It turns out that one of the 6 is trying to destroy the allies. And this main character was going to use it to good advantage. Hoenn wanted to destroy the traitor and take his place. The protagonist team burst into the hall where the meeting was being held. Caesar immediately rushed into the attack and beheaded Sujono Schwen. Only Hoenn knew that he was not the traitor. Everything went topsy-turvy again. Caesar found himself in the spotlight. To calm the impudent fellow, the Destroyer of Souls used his power. A powerful energy in the form of a dragon headed towards the main character. Lena warned that she would not be able to cover the boss and advised him to dodge. But Hoenn froze in place. He had no idea how one could dodge such a powerful attack. A few minutes earlier, a conflict had also arisen between the assistants of the 6 in the waiting room. It turns out that Heifel works for Suyono Schwen, who was not very well liked by the others. A black market will open soon. Its actual owner is the same Sujono Schwen. But everyone already knows that because of Black Mountain, things are not going very well for this character. The 6's assistants decided to laugh at Heifel about this, but the archer said that Schwen should not be underestimated. It seems to everyone that this person is only fixated on money, but this is far from true. Heifel's statement led those gathered to believe that Schwen was planning to take over as the leader of the 6. Velet could not resist and attacked the archer, but the killer turned out to be much faster. Heifel quickly got behind the attacker and decapitated him. Then the woman in red prepared to attack. Rune used the skill Pulsating Porcupine. This attack in a closed room had a super powerful effect. It wasn't just Heifel who suffered from it, but everyone else as well. But the girl didn't care. Rune is only interested in her beloved queer. And he also intended to use this meeting to overturn the hierarchy of the Six. To survive the battle that had begun, Heifel used an item from Schwen. But at that moment he received notification of the death of his leader. The surprise was so great that the archer was unable to dodge the next attack of Siemens' assistant. Heifel fell to the ground. But his transformation has already begun. The Lycan Berserker's forbidden item has begun to take effect. The archer turned into a beast. His strength increased by a whole level. Heifel grabbed the dwarf and bit his throat. Joe tried to stop the werewolf with his tongue. But the strengthened Heifel dealt with Israk's subject as well with one blow. Feeling incredible strength, the werewolf archer hurried to take Schwen's place in the Six. The moment of his appearance in the meeting room coincided with the moment of the attack of the Soul Destroyer. And the blow fell not on the main character, but on Heifel. Huan was incredibly lucky. But it turns out that the Soul Destroyer's attack was aimed at Heifel from the very beginning. The leader of the Six became interested in Black Mountain. As soon as the werewolf recovered from the first blow, Caesar pounced on him. A scuffle broke out between the two again. Only this time, Heifel's level was significantly increased. In his haste, Caesar didn't even have time to activate the 100-step art skill. And during the next attack, the big guy Heifel grabbed his sword with his teeth. Then the archer used the enhanced skill of the werewolf and struck the main character's subject. Caesar fell to the ground. The system immediately notified that he had died. Hoenn turned pale. Heifel approached Lena and suggested that she leave her boss so that they could continue to work together. Otherwise, he will destroy them both. Without thinking twice, the girl clung to the werewolf. Heifel took this as an agreement to go over to his side. But then I felt a sharp pain in my chest. Having gotten as close as possible, Lena stabbed him with a dagger. She had no intention of leaving her boss, as she hoped that all of the deceased Caesar's property would go to her. The werewolf was really angry. He activated the skill Wolf Howl. The piercing sound stuns all males within range. Immediately after this, Heifel rushed into the attack to finish off Black Mountain. Hoenn felt that he could not escape death. But at the moment, the hero was protected by Caesar. Nobody understood how Health managed to survive, and it was all about the healing necklace. This is the very thing that Hoenn stole from the priest and gave to Lena. Heifel knew that almost immediately after the resurrection, a strengthening occurs. He decided to deal a blow to his health before it felt the changes. The werewolf activated his superpowered ability again and pounced on Caesar. But this time the health was ready for this attack. Instead of defending himself, he prepared to strike the enemy. With one powerful swing of his sword, Caesar dealt with the werewolf. He felt his body become lighter. The giant's attack was so powerful that its cutting energy was directed towards the Soul Destroyers. Zeman warned the leader that he should dodge, but he decided to cover himself with the body of his subject Phenom. Activating the gravity skill, the Soul Destroyer placed it in front of him. For his victory over Heifel, Caesar received awards, and Hoenn barely survived the shockwave from his subject's powerful attack. His stamina was only at 20%. Lena demanded that Caesar return the healing necklace to the boss. But the big guy's attention was focused on the members of the Six. Destroyer Lucas expressed his impression of Caesar's composure. He invited him to join his mafia company. The seducer Queer was also amazed. The high vampire Israk was conquered by the giant's fearlessness. But Caesar responded by saying that the Six ranks were completely boring. I really wanted the fight to continue. Everyone gathered was stunned. Caesar was at it again. The Soul Destroyer drew his sword and aimed it at the hero's subject. Then Caesar admitted that his boss had predicted everything. All of the big guy's actions were coordinated by Hoenn's orders. The main character didn't understand how it worked at all. In his thoughts, he simply begged Caesar to stop. But the subject understood this as an order to continue in the same spirit. Well prepared to engage in battle with the Soul Destroyer. But the leader of the Six disarmed the enemy with the first swing of his sword. Caesar's giant sword flew towards the protagonist. Hoenn barely managed to dodge it. Immediately after this, the Soul Destroyer addressed the main character. He officially invited Hoenn to become a member of the Six ranks. Meanwhile, the Black Mountain Tavern workers arrived at the 100 Steps Art Training Hall. They were given the task of renovating this premises. After the battle between Caesar and the Six ranks assistants, the training hall was in a critical state. Suddenly, Saito, one of Caesar's students, appeared. He met the tavern owner, Tober. Saito proved himself to be a true disciple of Caesar. He was eager to measure ranks with Tober. But fortunately, there was another student of Caesar's with Saito, Ariel. She stopped her unreasonable comrade with a series of blows. As it turned out later, these two were in love with each other. The tavern workers turned their attention back to their task. But they are not destined to work peacefully. At this time, the former boss of the tavern, a representative of the criminal organization Yakuza Amon, was heading to the training hall. He came to take revenge on his former employees for betrayal. Without explanation, Yakuza dealt with one of the workers. And after him, with Tober himself. The six ranks meeting has ended. For some time, the protagonist's team was accompanied by the destroyer Lucas. The whole time, this man did not stop talking, trying to find out where the newcomer Hoen's strength was hidden. The protagonist tried to shut Lucas up, but he didn't give in. The destroyer responded to Caesar's attempt to force this by aggressively demonstrating his own strength. He did not harm the new members of the Six, but warned that this was just the beginning. A black market will open soon. Since its head, Sujono Shuen, is dead, Lucas will take over as the market's head. The destroyer told a story of how the Six came to be. Before the appearance of the Soul Destroyer, small wars occurred every day in the old eastern region. In such a regime, it was barely possible to preserve life. Even if you managed to win, there was a high probability that you would soon be betrayed. But suddenly one strong man appeared, and the situation began to change dramatically. It was the same Lucas. Zeman and even representatives of other races came with him. Lucas gathered allies from across the continent and brought them to Bram. Thus a black market was opened in which the abilities of the allies were tested. Lucas admitted that the Six were planning to attack the newcomer before he became even stronger. The black market is a special event for the leaders of Brahm's criminal guilds, and their presence is mandatory. During the auction, physical collisions between participants are possible, and this is normal. The protagonist received a system notification about an invasion of the base. Therefore, he immediately arrived at the 100-step art training hall. Almost all of the Black Mountain members in the room were killed. Eyewitnesses suggested that the attacker was Yakuza Amon, and they were not mistaken. Among the handymen present were strange faces in black combat gear. They appeared after the attack had already taken place. Hoen thought that this was all the work of Lucas from the 6th rank. Together with the tavern workers, the main character lost Caesar's student Ariel. The building was not damaged. However, Yakuza Amon took Ben hostage. This news upset the main character the most. After it turned out that the guy was connected to a high-level merchant, Hoen began to value him more. The main character even invested some money into it. He also had high hopes for Ben as a major player in the black market. Suddenly, Lena approached Hoen. She abruptly declared that she would find him on. The protagonist immediately objected. He thought it was too dangerous. However, Lena did not back down. Hoen noticed that the girl had changed. For some reason, she suddenly became very serious. The girl did not accept the boss's refusal and was determined to go in search of Yakus. Caesar tried to stop Lena. He was not going to allow arbitrary actions in the boss's team. Against this background, a conflict arose between the hero's two subjects. Caesar tried to stop the girl with a weapon, but Lena instantly disarmed her comrade. Then the main character took up arms. The girl lost consciousness from his blow. While the training hall was being renovated, Hoen thought about his next steps. Suddenly, the workers announced that they had found something, namely a pixel creature. She is currently playing the role of a slave. Ever since Hoen made an agreement with the pixel creature, Caesar's trembling had disappeared. The main character decided to invest some money in the new slave in order to temporarily remove the restrictive punishment. Thus, Hoen hopes to use the pixel creature on the black market. The decision was made. The main character spent 1,500 coopers on a slave. And at that moment, the pixel brainchild began to change. Skills and equipment have also been unlocked. In just a few seconds, a very beautiful woman stood in front of Hoen. The attention of everyone present was riveted on her. A beauty named Ellie thanked Hoen for her perfect return. The main character was completely confused. The black-clad laborers were about to report this event to the Soul Destroyer. It turns out that they are messengers of the leader of the Six. Ellie's skills have also been unlocked. With the advent of third-generation VR, the line between reality and the digital world has gradually blurred. Previously, players could use a fake image that was completely inconsistent with reality. Over time, the developers made it so that the user's appearance synchronizes with the virtual avatar. There may be a slight deviation, but the created character is quite similar to a real player. This means that Ellie in real life looks like an advertisement for the game Labyrinth World. Looking into the system window, Hoen saw that the beauty was level 583. However, she was not noted to have any outstanding abilities. While the protagonist was pondering this, Ellie circled around him like a butterfly. But then suddenly she slapped Hoenn. Then Caesar intervened. He warned his boss that Ellie was dangerous. Health itself hid behind a column. The beauty noticed that she felt the aura of a real man and now understood that she belonged to Caesar. Ellie felt that the hero's subject was very similar to the demon king of the previous generation of the mountain. They were in a romantic relationship at the time. To make Ellie give up all her vain hopes, Hoenn told her who Caesar was. And then he asked directly about the girl's hidden abilities and the reason for her punishment by the developers. In general, all the beauty indicators are critically low, but the player's level shows that she has significant skills. Ellie decided to confess. She said that she was a beauty who destroyed the country. That is, the emperor fell in love with her so much that he neglected all his affairs and brought the state into a critical situation. Many rulers of thrones tried to win the girl's favor. Some were captivated by Ellie's beauty, while others sought to use her for political purposes. Hoenn couldn't believe his ears. There is one such user of the labyrinth world in the whole world. At the moment of this realization by the main character, Ellie suddenly approached him. Grabbing Hoenn's face with her palms, the girl admitted that she possessed the highest attractiveness class, magic. As a rule, even the slightest physical contact can lead to obsession. But the girl noticed that this rule did not work with Hoenn. In order to charm and gain the protagonist's fortune, Ellie kissed him. But the effect was again unexpected. Hoenn lost consciousness. He was in severe shock. It was the first kiss in the hero's life. And Lena found out about this. Late in the evening, the subject visited the boss, who was still in a fever and dreaming. In the dream, Hoenn tried to stop Ellie. The main character cried out of fear of losing all his money. Lena came to say goodbye to the boss. The girl was worried that now no one would take care of Hoenn the way she did. However, I couldn't act differently. In the second generation of the game, one warrior managed to stop the Demon King. However, after ascending to the throne of the great Demon King, the hero began to turn into a demon himself. Numerous brave men sacrificed their lives to defeat the ruler of the evil throne. Eventually, they managed to seal the Demon King in a prison called the Labyrinth. From the throne, the Demon King descended into the dark abyss. But the power of his mighty darkness gave birth to monsters that filled the labyrinth. To protect against them, a wall and the city of Bram were built. Then the fourth generation of the game appeared. The warriors were strong. They managed to get closer to the center of the labyrinth, but no one managed to defeat the Demon King. The moment had come when the embodiment of evil was ready to emerge into the world again to take over it completely. This was the beginning of the fifth generation labyrinth world. Several days passed while the main character was in a fever. But when he woke up, Ellie was already there. The beauty was surprised that her skill had no effect on Hoenn. The girl had never met a man who could not be captivated by his beauty. So Ellie decided that a simple kiss wasn't enough for Hoenn. The beauty approached the main character, but immediately received a warning from the system. Due to excessive stress on his nerve connections, Hoenn is at risk of going into shock in real life. No one had ever died from activating Ellie's skill, so the girl didn't stop after the warning. At this time, the protagonist's consciousness entered an unknown empty space. Hoenn already thought he was dead. When Ellie first used the skill, the hero thought it didn't work due to poor synchronization, and only now did he realize that Ellie was familiar to him. She is a fourth-generation ranker, the queen of mercenaries. This girl, like the main character, was completely absorbed by the concept of the game. She was able to take possession of the Demon King himself, but whether Rodrigo reached him, Hoenn did not remember. And I didn't understand why. The memories of the creation of the orphanage have not disappeared. But how it all ended in the last generation is unknown. There was no answer. So Hoenn decided to stop thinking and just relax. But as soon as the hero closed his eyes, the system reported that he was leaving the special space. So Hoenn didn't die. He was forced to exit the game due to external interference in his body, and a moment later found himself in his own room. Ilden stood nearby. It was he who woke up the main character. Ilden explained that he came to apologize. The fat man felt ashamed for using Hoenn. But the moment Ilden came to his friend, he noticed that he had an attack. That is, the fat man appeared exactly when Ellie used her skill on him. Taking the opportunity, Hoenn asked if Ilden remembered what happened to Rodrigo after entering the labyrinth. And it turned out that nothing. Embarrassed, the fat man tried to persuade the protagonist to return to Rodrigo's path. This would make it easier for him to advance in the criminal world. However, the main character had a different plan. Putting on the VR glasses, Hoenn was about to continue his conversation with his friend. He asked Ilden about Ellie, and he said that this person had caused enough trouble in the third generation. She destroyed other users and turned to the evil side. Therefore, in the fourth generation, a punishment was imposed on her. Ildon suddenly launched the game login. The main character found himself in the labyrinth world again. He hadn't figured everything out with the fat man yet, but the system had already worked. At this point, Ellie was sitting tied up. Caesar did his best here. He immobilized the girl before she could harm the boss. Ellie could have easily conquered the healthy one, but she didn't want to. He is too similar to her beloved, that is, the Demon King. To talk about this, Hoenn asked Caesar to leave the room. The subject was afraid to leave the main character alone with this dangerous woman. But when he saw Hoenn's expression, he knew the boss was back. The main character confessed to Ellie that he knew who she was, and he told her that he himself was Rodrigo Eldrigo. During the conversation, it turned out that Ellie had no memories of what happened to her before the punishment. Hoenn also doesn't remember anything after he entered the labyrinth. More than anything, Ellie wanted to get her memories back. The main character had the same goal. So he suggested to the girl that they join forces in order to get to the Demon King together. Hoenn and Ellie had the same reason why they were trying to remember the previous game. Both felt that it was fun then. The girl agreed to join the main character. Ellie put forward only one condition: no one should know about her identity. Before this union, the girl planned to turn everything upside down and go into the labyrinth alone. But she was even glad that she was not alone now. The main character was also glad that Ellie was with him and not against him. It is not safe to have such a strong and skilled opponent. Now all of Hoenn's thoughts have turned to the black market. He completely forgot about Lena and Ben. Caesar was amazed. He thought that the boss simply decided to get rid of weak subordinates. The 6 ranks also didn't waste any time. They were preparing for the black market. The main character's entry into the 6 alarmed all the other members. Zeman contacted Lucas and reported that the Soul Destroyer was targeting Blackrock Mountain. However, there is a possibility that in case of defeat, the leader of the 6 may team up with Hoenn. And then the remaining 4 members will not be able to resist the powers of Caesar and the Soul Destroyer. Zeman thought of everything and suggested to Lucas to create an alliance to defeat the main character. Israk and Kavir have already agreed to cooperate. Meanwhile, Hoenn was also considering the prospect of being invited to the black market. At first, the main character planned to bring back his subordinates, but they were kidnapped by the former leader of the 6 ranks, Yakuza Amun. Even Caesar will have a hard time rescuing hostages while fighting such a strong enemy. On the other hand, it is better to deal with this matter later. It is known that many valuable and rare things can be bought on the black market. The main character hoped to strengthen himself and find new allies in this way. Then he will be able to easily defeat Yakusamon and bring back his subjects. Despite this, going to the black market without Lena was equally scary for Hoenn. At this time, the girl arrived at the abandoned orphanage of Rodrigo Eldrigo. Lena immediately approached the painting depicting the director, and then she gave free rein to her tears because she missed Rodrigo very much. 10 years ago, Lena was Yakusamon's pet. It was this criminal who taught her to be a killer. However, he kept repeating that the girl did not live up to his expectations. Lena tried her best to earn money for food. And finally, the time came for her first real mission. Yakuza brought the ward to the orphanage. At that moment, the children were playing baseball in the yard. Lena was surprised that they were doing such carefree things during such a difficult time for everyone. Suddenly, the director on the top floor of the building opened a window and personally called the children to eat. But at that moment, a baseball hit him. Rodrigo was once again under attack, and the children who loved him so much were uneasy about it. Lena received the task of killing the main character. The girl thought that the problems would not go away because Hoenn couldn't even dodge the ball. But Yakuza noted that the tasks of criminal guilds are never easy. Lena entered the building without any problems. Rodriguez was still unconscious after being hit by a baseball. A conversation took place in the corridor between the shelter worker Bramberg and the nanny. The woman expressed concern that Rodriguez had become weak after going into the labyrinth. But Bramberg assured that he had been like that before. Right behind the orphanage worker's back, Lena entered the director's room. Using the special skill spatial projection, the girl passed through the locked door. However, her strength was only enough for one such use. The girl noticed a giant portrait of the owner of the shelter on the wall. It looked pretty weird. Throwing aside all unnecessary thoughts, Lena focused on the goal. Hoenn was sleeping and muttering something under his breath. The killer took out a dagger and stabbed Rodrigo. But a moment later, she noticed that she had hit the pillow. The director rolled over onto his other side at the moment of impact. Lena tried again, but this time too, everything ended unsuccessfully. A series of subsequent attempts also failed to produce results. Lena was already beginning to doubt that Rodrigo was sleeping at all. The girl activated her high-level skull, Hornet Sting. It ignores any dodge and hits the target. But at that moment, Bramberg entered the director's room. The minor murderer has been caught. Rodrigo couldn't believe that such a sweet girl was a criminal. But the nanny wasn't surprised at all. Lena was not the first child to try to kill the principal. And if children are sent to deal with Rodrigo, it means he has the strength of a rabbit. Nanny Gail tried to find out why criminal organizations would kill the director of an orphanage. But Lena didn't know. She just said that she was very hungry and called the nanny aunt. Gail was very angry about this. The main character took on the task of protecting the children from her, and then an idea came to his mind. If it is impossible to let the kids go and kill them as well, then the director will take up his upbringing. Rodrigo immediately got a kick in the pants for this idea. He promised Nanny Gail that he would no longer take in children at the orphanage. But Rodrigo had already decided. He offered Lena to become his subordinate, promising free food. This moment put an end to the girl's decision. She agreed without hesitation. In the fourth generation, the contract between subject and boss had special power. It could only be broken if the player himself refused or died. The subordinate had to carry out all the player's orders. A subordinate could leave his boss only if the contract was concluded by force. Rodrigo found an approach to Lena in order to conclude an agreement with her voluntary consent. In the evening, the girl was given clean clothes and a soft bed. In the fifth generation, Lena also became subject to the protagonist. But she missed Rodrigo so much that she went to that same abandoned orphanage. This is where Yakuza Amon found her. During the battle, he managed to hit the girl with his sword. The villain knew that Lena would come to the shelter. As he parted, Amon noted that his strength lay in the absence of feelings. And revenge on Lena is just repaying a debt. As she fell, the girl only regretted that she couldn't protect either the director or the boss. The leaders of the Labyrinth's criminal underworld are the 6 ranks: Soulbreaker, Zeman, Queer, Lucas, Israk, and Hoenn. All of them very rarely get together as a whole group, and the event that unites them is the black market. All the evil spirits of Brahma gather here. It is on the black market that Zeman intends to defend his position in the top 6. And for this, he decided to destroy the Destroyer of Souls and the organization of the Black Mountains. The leader of the 6 made no secret of his commitment to Hoenn. He believed that with the main character, the criminal world became much stronger. The purpose of the 6 is to destroy order and spread chaos. To achieve this goal, it is necessary to involve as many people as possible. It is important that everyone is inspired by the idea of destruction. In this regard, the Black Mountains organization is very useful. They enjoy a popularity that Soul Destroyer feels the 6 ranks lack. The leader of the criminal underworld leaders this time entrusted the black market to Zeman and left the meeting place. When the main character appeared, he immediately felt that they wanted to kill him. All those present were armed. In addition, Hoenn's team was surrounded. Zeman soon announced that the time had come. The subjects of the 6 rushed to attack from all sides. Caesar swung his sword in all directions, trying to protect the boss. Luckily, Ellie was with Hoenn. When a vampire snuck up on the main character from behind, it was the beauty who saved him. She used the skill Great Charm and took control of some of the 6's subjects. Realizing that the attack was aimed at destroying Hoenn, Ellie forced the villains to protect it. With great difficulty, the main character's team managed to destroy almost all of the enemies. Lucas, who was ranked 3rd in the top 6, expressed his impressions. The vampire Israk, the 2nd ranker, was no less surprised. 4th place, Queer, prepared to continue the battle. And 1st place, Zeman said that the 6 would destroy Hoenn before he even thought of attacking them. The protagonist's nightmare continued. What bothered Hoenn the most was the idea that NPCs were trying to destroy users. As he prepared for the attack, Zeman explained that crime was not the 6's only goal. They seek to destroy this world. Hoenn was stunned by this statement. But the hero's subjects believed that the boss had everything under control. The battle has begun. Queer attacks Caesar. While the big guy's attention was focused on him, Lucas attacked from behind. He was able to strike the hero subject. At that moment, a vampire took aim at the defenseless Hoenn. Luckily, Saito noticed this and rushed to help. Thanks to the technique of art, he managed to hold back the first blow for 100 steps. But Zeman attacked right after him, and then Saito's defense couldn't hold up. The main character's team was losing. Ellie also started working. By activating the charm skill, she made Zeman stop breathing. And if Lucas hadn't come to the rescue, there would have been one less member of the 6. Hoenn didn't understand why the NPCs were trying to destroy this world. Since then, they would disappear too. Queer said they no longer wanted to be shackled and behave like apostates. Suddenly, stones began to fall from the ceiling of the black market building. And just a few minutes later, a mega-muscular woman in a nanny outfit, Gale, appeared. She is the protector of Lady Dorothy of the Aegis clan, and she arrived at the black market to find a groom for the girl. At this moment, Hone received a notification that Lena's life force was less than 20% left. Also, the BlackRock headquarters was attacked by the leader of the criminal organization, Yagusa Amon. Hoon was in despair. He considered quitting the game altogether. However, the situation changed dramatically after the appearance of a muscular woman. With one blow, she neutralized the vampire. For others, she dealt with Lucas. The defeated sixes were nothing but flying debris in front of the defender, Mrs. Dorothy. Even first-place Zeman was knocked out with one punch from a woman dressed as a nanny. In a matter of minutes, Gale defeated the leaders of the criminal world. And then she said with disappointment that none of them were suitable for the role of a man for Mrs. Dorothy. Only Hohen remained, and Gale was going to test what he was capable of. The main character felt terrified just by the look of this very strong woman. And then Hohen had a plan. He said that he would find a worthy candidate for the role of groom. Hohen was about to introduce Gale to Yaksu Amon, and he hoped that in this way he would lose another of his powerful enemies. The nanny agreed to leave with the main character. On the way to the Black Mountains headquarters, Gale voiced the main requirements for Dorota's groom. The first is that he must accept the woman's whims. The nanny noticed that none on the black market met this requirement. Hohen realized that the woman's whims meant beating. The second requirement is that the groom must whisper to his woman about his endless love for her. And the third is that Mrs. Dorothy must not touch the water with her finger. Hohen and Gale arrived at the BlackRock base and immediately found Yaksamon. The villain was just destroying the main character's subjects. Without any explanation, the nanny began to check the candidate proposed by the main character. Meanwhile, Bramberg arrived at the black market, the same one who, together with Nanny Gale, worked at the Rodrigo Eldrigo orphanage. It was Bramberg who persuaded the six ranks to kill the main character. He also hired Yakusamon. But all of Bramberg's attempts failed. He was already beginning to think that Hohen was much stronger than he seemed. But Zeman explained that the plan failed because of a muscular woman dressed as a nanny. The appearance of a familiar game from the previous generation pushed Bramberg to take more decisive action. Zeman was worried that they would no longer be able to defeat the Soul Destroyer. But Bramberg assured that he was already finished. At that very moment, Gale attacked Yakusamon. He managed to block the blow and defend himself. The nanny was delighted because Dorothy's fiancé's first demand had been fulfilled. Immediately after this, Gale began to check the candidate for compliance with the second requirement. The nanny rushed into the attack again. But this time Yakusa wasn't going to take the hit. That's not what he was here for. The villain instantly approached the main character and prepared to strike him. Despite this, Hohen received a warning about the danger from the system. Sensing the death of his boss, Caesar became enraged. At the last moment, he managed to protect the main character. But in this state, the big guy is unable to recognize his allies. He didn't recognize the boss either and immediately rushed to attack him. The main character dodged as best he could. Caesar spent too much energy on the black market and now found himself in this state. Noticing discord in the enemy's ranks, Yakusa Amon prepared to deliver a decisive blow. The main character found himself between two fires. Caesar approached him from one side and Yaksu from the other. At a critical moment, the knowledge hidden in Hohen's subconscious was activated. He remembered how Rodrigo became one of the strongest. Hohen found a way to survive. He used the skill Command. The system of servants of the Labyrinth world is unique. By correctly investing charisma points, you can get a subject who is much stronger than you. However, the boss must live up to his subject's expectations. Only in this way can he reveal his full potential. A boss who meets all the requirements gains access to the ability to manage subjects. Order. Rodrigo Eldrigo reached the top of the rankings thanks to his numerous subjects. He was harsh with some. He treated others as a friend. Rodrigo showed his special face to everyone, and everyone could be given an order. It was this skill that made Rodrigo a legend. Hohen recalled his experience. At the last moment, he ordered Caesar to come to his senses. Caesar's efficiency in carrying out orders increased to 200%. And all because health is carried away by the criminal nature of the boss. The target of Caesar's attack has changed. He struck against Yakusa Amon. The enemy avoided defeat and noticed that the enemy had become much faster. Hohen ordered his subject to change strategy. You can't defeat an enemy by simply swinging a sword. The main character understood well that his strength lay in his advice. Hohen decided to control the fight. He ordered Caesar to approach the enemy and swing his sword. Yes, only for deception. When the enemy prepared to defend himself from the sword attack, Caesar used the 100 pace technique. On the other hand, he struck with his fist. Yakuza did not expect such a turn of events. Gale appreciated the protagonist's trick. Caesar continued to attack with his fists. This continued until all the enemy's attention was focused on close combat. And when Yakuza was preparing to dodge the punches, he found himself within the sword's reach. Caesar took advantage of this and launched an attack, but they failed to hit the target. An obstacle has appeared between Yakuza and health. Bramberg intervened and repelled Caesar's attack. In this generation of the game, he is the mayor of the labyrinth city of Brahm, and this character appeared to put an end to this battle. Bramberg stated that it is impossible to eradicate crime in one fell swoop, and this is a fact. However, the city mayor cannot stand by while his people tremble in fear. Hoenn was stunned when he saw his subject from the previous generation of the game. Back then, in the orphanage, Bramberg was doing the job of a strategist and doing it well. He was a stickler for rules. So now Hoenn didn't want this man to know who he was at all. Hoenn noticed that Caesar had changed. Instead of attacking mindlessly, he decided to listen to his boss's opinion. After the main character applied the order, his health became more restrained. Suddenly, Gale intervened in the conversation. She recognized her colleague Bramberg from the shelter. But the nanny was not at all happy to see him. Memories came flooding back to Hoenn. When Rodrigo took Lena into the shelter, Bramberg was simply mad with rage. There were already more than 70 children. Also, knowing that Hoenn's goal was to get through the labyrinth, he called the shelter a combat unit. Bramberg tried to explain to the director that increasing the number of children would lead to bankruptcy, and then Rodrigo will never reach his goal. Hoenn valued Bramberg highly and was even a little afraid of him. Watching the town mayor and the nanny quarrel, Ellie assumed that Gale was also from the orphanage. But the main character didn't recognize her at all. During the argument between the two, Hoenn heard about a certain will of Rodrigo. He tried to find out what it meant and said that he was connected with the director of the shelter. But Bramberg laughed in response. And then he warned that if Hoenn would hide behind Rodrigo, the whole city would become his enemy. Suddenly, the main character remembered Ilden's words. The fat man recommended checking what Rodrigo was doing. Hoenn himself wanted to remember what happened in the previous generation of the game. The protagonist was distracted from his thoughts by Ben. The worried boy rushed to report Lena's critical condition. The girl was dying. Hoenn instantly found his subject and brought her to the Temple of Healing for treatment. For 3 days and 3 nights, the priest worked tirelessly. They managed to save the girl, but she still hasn't regained consciousness. In the evening, the main character came to Lena. He wanted to talk. Ben reported that the battle between the subject and Yakus was fierce, so these two have known each other for a long time. Bramberg's changes were another problem, and for some reason the nanny decided to choose the main character for the role of a man for Mrs. Dorothy. All this made Hoenn's head spin, but he just wanted to play quietly. Suddenly, someone in a black cloak entered the room. Hoenn was scared and already thought that Bramberg had sent someone. It was a soul destroyer. And Bramberg is his enemy. The city mayor almost killed the leader of the Six. Soul Destroyer performed an attack on the hero. And then he announced that Bramberg was going to start a rebellion using NPCs. The 6 ranks were also part of his plan. While Rodrigo fought the Demon King in the depths of the labyrinth, his strategist turned rebellious. However, Bramberg failed to kill the director of the orphanage. Rodrigo simply disappeared. Then the strategist continued his plan. He teamed up with several of the protagonist's subjects and introduced himself as the Will of Rodriguez. The Soul Destroyer blamed Hoenn for everything, and all because it was the main character's subjects who raised the alarm. If Rodrigo hadn't grown them so hard, none of this would have happened. The Soul Destroyer advised the protagonist to accumulate charisma points. He will then be able to buy back his previous character's data and inherit the title of Vault Director. Bramberg and the other NPCs will once again become Hoenn's subjects. The main character himself started this mess, so he has to eat it. Then the Destroyer of Souls took off his mask. And it turned out to be a charming girl named Ruby. She is a player just like Hoenn. Finally, the girl asked the protagonist to stop Bramberg's plan. This situation only arose because Hoenn's subjects were too capable. Ruby also said that Lena and Nanny Gale were also from the shelter. Until now, the main character didn't even know about it. Gale from the Rodriguez shelter was once a fragile, sweet woman. Having recovered a little from everything he had heard, Hoenn tried to find out why Ruby was doing this. But the girl said everything. To avoid unnecessary questions, she hit the main character and he lost consciousness. Ruby lost her friends, so she acted this way. Bramberg realized that the leader of the Chani Mountains was that same Rodrigo. The main character's union with Gale came as an unpleasant surprise to the mayor. He can't let Hoenn become Rodrigo again. And to prevent this from happening, Bramberg decided to speed up the implementation of the plan. He wants to destroy Hoenn. The last days of the protagonist game turned out to be very tense. Lena was getting better, but she still hadn't regained consciousness. Ellie decided to check something out and has been running back and forth like a meteor ever since. Caesar, amazed by the boss's abilities, took up training. The main character tried to solve the main problem. Hoenn still couldn't find a worthy candidate to be Dorothy's husband instead of himself. The nanny's patience was running out. The main character decided to check the information from the Soul Destroyer. He asked if the nanny worked at an orphanage. Surprisingly, Gail said yes. Moreover, she decided to tell something about Rodrigo's past and what happened to the shelter. One day, the director gathered all his first-line subjects in his office. From that moment on, everything changed. Previously, Rodrigo often met with each of them separately, but this was the first time he had gathered them all together. The director planned to go into the depths of the labyrinth. Gail remembered that day very well. Sometime earlier, the director ordered his subject, Hygrid, to gather information about the labyrinth. He reported that all high-level players who tried to pass the labyrinth died. Even a top 20 player died on the 8th floor of the dungeon. There were rumors that an unknown killer had appeared there and was destroying players. She is capable of dealing with even the most experienced squads on her own. The reason for this situation is unknown. Subject Penbauer tried to refuse the director the idea of going into the labyrinth. He suggested doing this when they had enough strength. But Rodrigo insisted on his own. And the only explanation for this decision was that this venture promised to be incredibly exciting. Gail still can't forget the director's goofy expression when he said that. Hoenn knew it was true because he had always been like that. The nanny continued her story. She noticed that Rodrigo's subjects were too capable. The destroyer of souls said the same thing. They had more important things to do than entertain the director. The servants had a purpose. However, they could not disobey the boss's order since the system forced them to obey. And Frost, the sage of the battlefield, knew this well. Penbauer, Rodrigo's first servant, did not understand why he would endanger himself and his subjects. But Hoenn's heart was set on entertainment. He understood that he could die in the depths of the dangerous labyrinth. But the thing is that every strong player strives to challenge the Demon King. This is why Hoenn plays this game. He worked hard to earn charisma points and cultivate servants. And now he wanted to use them. The hero's desire was so great that for several minutes he screamed like a child, wanting to get into a labyrinth. Having calmed down, Rodrigo dismissed all the servants. Only Nanny Gail remained in the office, and she expressed the opinion that the main character's intentions were completely stupid. But Hoenn didn't change his mind. The hero only asked that in the event of his death, Gail take care of the children. She didn't blame the director because she understood that players would never understand NPCs. After meeting Rodrigo, all the servants felt at a loss. That's when the idea of fighting for my life arose. Bramberg was determined. He couldn't accept the director's decision. And all because when NPCs die, they disappear forever. The next day, Rodrigo was hit in the face by a baseball and lost consciousness. That's when Lena appeared. At this point, the nanny finished her story. She asked the main character to take care of the girl and be gentle with her. Lena has been through a lot. Gail then stated that Hoenn looks somewhat like Rodrigo. And a moment later, she finally decided that he would become Dorothy's fiancé. The main character was overcome with panic. He began to beg Ellie for help. If the girl had used her charm and made the nanny change her mind, Hoenn would have been saved. But she refused. The thing is, Gail has such a strong will that no charm can get through to him. But Ellie saw the good side of it. Recently, she tried to figure out what had changed while she was away. But she learned that Mrs. Dorothy is the only heir of the noble Aegis family. They were a renowned clan of adventurers and dungeon crawlers. When Dorothy was very young, Frost and Hygrid, Rodriguez's subjects, destroyed her entire family. Then the little orphan was taken in and raised by Nanny Gail. Even after the clan's fall, there were still many people in the city who supported Dorothy. By establishing a relationship with the only heir of the Aegis family, you can get an entire army of allies. And you don't even have to get married. Ellie could charm all the fighters. The day of Hoenn's introduction to his bride has arrived. Gail warned that Dorothy was very shy, so one should be careful with her. When the main character entered Mrs. Aegis's room, he was pleasantly surprised. The girl was exceptionally beautiful, but her body terrified Hoenn. It was so strong that one blow would be enough to kill someone like him. There was no doubt that the girl was raised by Gail. Pushing aside his fear with all his might, Hoenn introduced himself and extended his hand. He tried to act casually so that this meeting would not be the last in his life. But at that moment, bad synchronization corrected the hero's facial expression. In a fluster, Mrs. Dorothy punched Hohen in the face. She was shy and didn't know how to behave. The system immediately warned of lethal levels of harm. At this time, Lena regained consciousness. Caesar stood next to her. The boss ordered the big guy to protect the girl. Lena was pleasantly surprised by this. She wanted to see Hohen, but Caesar said that the boss had gone to get married. The girl's anger flared up. Hohen received many messages about this. If Lena is not calmed down, her loyalty will decrease. It took a little while to bring the protagonist back to consciousness. Dorothy's acquaintance with Hohen continued in the garden over tea. The lady apologized for her sudden attack and attributed it to excitement. It's just that Dorothy had been waiting for this meeting for a very long time. The nanny was closely watching what was happening nearby from behind a tree. Lady Aegis told the protagonist about the curse that lies on her entire family. It was cast by an evil witch many generations ago. From then on, all Aegis members must marry before the age of 25. Regardless of whether the partner's feelings are sincere or selfish, he is doomed to eternal torment, and eventually he dies. Hohen was stunned, to say the least. That's why the curse of the nanny has been looking for a suitable man for Dorothy for many years. She spent a lot of effort to find a person strong enough to break the witch's curse. And Dorothy believes that the head of the Black Mountains Criminal Guild is suitable for this role. Trying to save himself, Hohen began to tell how terrible he was. But this did not bring any results. Suddenly, the hero received a message about the discovery of a thirst for murder aimed at him by Lena. Hohen's subject rushed straight towards the boss at full speed. Caesar and Ellie tried to catch up with her, but they couldn't. The situation escalated and Dorothy continued to talk. Lena was already close enough to perform an attack. At this moment, Lady Aegis invited the protagonist to spend their wedding night with her. And then everything around seemed to stop. Everyone froze in place, even Lena. Meanwhile, Frost had already been informed that Nanny Gale was also in the game. Everything went according to Bramberg's plan. Rodrigo's return marked the beginning of a full-scale war. The villains began to prepare. By this time, Frost already had a whole army of zombie warriors ready. With their help, he intends to destroy the players of the Labyrinth world. The third traitor, Hygrid, Rodrigo's former subject, was in the Labyrinth at that moment. He went there to recruit monsters to fight against humans. The war between NPCs and players is about to begin. Meanwhile, Lena's anger flared up again. She was eager for an explanation and again rushed into the attack. But Gale stopped her. The girl recognized the voice of the nanny from the orphanage and could not believe that it was really her. Emotions took over and Lena burst into tears. She didn't understand why Gale left her. Everyone left her. Lena felt terribly lonely. People whom the girl considered sisters and brothers died before her eyes. It was so painful that she decided to return to Yaksuamon. Lena had nowhere to go, and she again got involved with crime. She blamed the nanny for not keeping her promise to the director to protect the shelter. In response, Gale hugged the girl and asked for forgiveness. Then she told everything that happened that day. Rodrigo was defeated in the labyrinth. His wounded and battle-weary first-line subjects barely returned alive. There were 3 strategists left in the rear: Frost, Hygrid, and Bramberg. They were supposed to protect the orphanage. But instead, the villains rebelled and attacked the wounded warriors who had returned from the labyrinth. The traitors killed every single one of them, and the shelter was set on fire. Realizing that something terrible was happening, Gale secretly took the children out. She had to go into hiding. The heart yearned for revenge, but the nanny was too weak. Since then, she has not stopped training. Every day she worked to strengthen her body until she was exhausted. Having gotten into shape, Gale decided to first take revenge on Frost. But she suffered a defeat. That same day, the nanny met little Mrs. Dorothy. The girl tearfully begged for help. She wanted to become strong in order to take revenge on the killers of the Aegis family. From then on, Gale became Dorothy's protector. But she did not forget the children of the orphanage. The nanny was going to find everyone after she took revenge. This story somewhat shocked the main character. Hohen couldn't believe his servants did this. Gale proved that Rodriguez means a lot to her. Therefore, the main character decided to confess that he is the director of the same orphanage. Hohen had only good memories of his subjects. One day they gave Rodrigo his portrait. Then the main character became indignant, because this thing in the shelter only means the owner's in love. Hohen understands that for most users, this world is just a game. But for him, everything was very important. It was an unforgettable and happy life. The main character left the game and vowed to never play again. But the desire to relive those happy moments made Hohen return. But an unpleasant surprise awaited the hero there. Those with whom he shared pleasant memories turned out to be traitors. For a long time, Gale could not believe that Rodrigo had actually returned. But she didn't understand why it took so long. And why did the director of the orphanage come back as the leader of a criminal organization? But here everything was simple. Hohen himself didn't know that it would turn out like this. He lived without thinking about the consequences, but he couldn't admit it. The nanny knew the director of the shelter too well, and therefore she herself understood why this happened. Gail forgave Hohen for his foolish behavior. The only thing she demanded from him was to never leave Lena again. The girl was already scared enough. And finally she found someone she could trust. Under pressure from the nanny, the protagonist promised that he would take care of Lena. And then he assured that he was going to fix everything. Only this time, he will act according to the Black Mountains method. Hohen planned to make Caesar the lord of the criminal underworld, and he was fired up by this idea. Leni Hohen promised that he would take revenge for all her suffering. Ellie noticed the confidence in the protagonist's words and wanted to know the reason. But it was simple. Hohen had a plan. He decided to take Ellie's advice in marrying Dorothy. The Aegis family was a dungeon-clearing family, meaning they had many strong adventurer acquaintances. This way, the main character will be able to quickly make them his subordinates. Moreover, in the Labyrinth world, there are things that are accessible only to those in power. For example, participation in the Council of Aristocrats. From the nanny, Hohen learned that Frost became an archduke and Hygrid became a chancellor. These two have voting rights on the council and exert great influence. They cannot be overcome by force. Caesar still needs to strengthen himself. Betrothal from Dorothy gives a chance to become the head of the noble house of Aegis. But in order to receive the coat of arms of this family, the main character must spend his wedding night. Although he didn't expect to feel anything due to the poor synchronization, the time has come for this event. Dorothy showed up on time. The girl immediately began to act. She delivered a powerful blow to Hohen's stomach. The main character didn't understand what was wrong again. But it turned out that it was all about the nanny's explanation. Gail told Dorota what was supposed to happen on the wedding night. According to her, brides must push their bodies together with all their passion until the morning. Hohen realized that this was a battle to the death. At this time, Lena was sitting on the roof of the building, deep in thought. Caesar joined her because the protagonist did not cancel the order to protect the girl. Suddenly, the big guy announced that his boss was not Rodrigo. Hohen goes down the path of evil, and Caesar follows him. In order to move forward, Lena also needs to decide who she is imitating. The girl really thought about it. But a moment later, she made a decision. She was going to take revenge on the villains who destroyed her house. And she will do this together with the boss, not the director of the orphanage. The wedding night event has ended. Hohen was incredibly happy that he managed to survive and receive the Aegis family crest. Soon after, Lena visited the boss and announced her readiness to kill. But the main character calmed his subjects' ardor. First, Hohen plans to make Lena and Caesar better servants. In order to connect all forces, the protagonist returned to the Black Mountains base. Ben and the rest of the subjects greeted the boss with joy. Hohen introduced everyone to his new allies, Nanny Gail and Mistress Dorothy. And then he announced that he was going to get married. The only one who wasn't surprised by this news was Ben. It turns out that he already knew about the boss's intention, as he overheard his conversation with the nanny. The guy raised the question of what would happen to the rest of the organization. And then Hohen announced that the control system would switch to a military system. Caesar will be the commander of the First Legion. Under his command reigns of 100 steps. Lena is the commander of the Second Legion. He leads a criminal guild. Ben took up the position of advisor. Hohen then apologized to the guys from the 100-step dojo for not paying enough attention to them. Now the main character will do everything to ensure that the warriors no longer lose their comrades. This confession touched the fighters. Their morale immediately rose, and everyone swore allegiance to the boss. Hohen then turned to the guys from the criminal guild. The boss was truly grateful that they didn't leave him after Yaxamon appeared. Although, in fact, they were just about to do this. Hohen promised that from now on, each of the criminal organizations would receive a pay raise. Everyone once again swore allegiance to the boss. Even the subjects of the Soul Destroyer who went missing decided to remain in the Black Mountain organization. The main character declared that from now on he will take the path of absolute evil, and his goal is to destroy the rotten center of the Labyrinth world, the city of Brahm. In addition, Hohen activated the skill Order to achieve his goal. The first steps of the organization will be to strengthen it. The 100 Steps Martial Arts Dojo, or the First Legion, will train true warriors. The Second Legion will specialize in training assassins. After this, Hohen plans to take over all the underground channels owned by the criminal guilds. He will exploit a weakness in Bramberg's plan. The traitor seeks to seize power and then hide in the shadows, while Hohen intends to do the opposite. Destroying the 6 ranks and taking their place is the first task for Lena and Caesar. The path of revenge against the traitors has begun. Chancellor Hygrid controls the flow of funds. Archduke Frost holds the right of chairmanship in the Council of Aristocrats. He creates laws that are beneficial to himself and his allies. And the mayor of the city of Bramberg controls the most important thing in this game. He decides who is allowed to enter the labyrinth. Those who try to contradict Bramberg's plans will face reprisals. Every day there are rumors around town that someone has lost their character letter. The villains have pulled off so many deeds that even the most famous players must unite to achieve the same. There are a lot of NPCs in the Labyrinth world. Their artificial intelligence is so developed that they are practically indistinguishable from humans. NPCs decided to establish their own rules in this world. To do this, you need to create an army. The protagonist believes that this is exactly what the 6 ranks are doing. The problem is that a soul destroyer appeared and united them. But now he is missing. This makes things somewhat simpler. Hoenn will take over the entire criminal world that the NPCs have so diligently cultivated. Caesar and Lena have already set off on their mission. He and the fighters from the dojo did a great job of defeating Lucas's subjects. The destroyer was stunned by the impudence of the protagonist's subject. When Lucas could no longer resist, Caesar gave him an order from the boss. Hoenn said the 6 rank system was ineffective. Black Mountain is going to establish absolute power over them all. It was as if it were an offer, but in case of refusal, the main character did not guarantee his life. Lena conveyed the same message to the vampire Israk. Both ranks, trying to save themselves, agreed. The so-called negotiations of the protagonist's subjects ended successfully. After this, Lena and Caesar captured Lucas and Israk. Hoenn was proud of his subjects. They brought the destroyer and the vampire to the organization's base. The 2 ranks didn't understand why the main character didn't just kill them. But the thing is, Hoenn is out to rule the criminal underworld, not destroy it. The main character offered cooperation. There was no talk of voluntary consent. But under threat of death, Lucas and Israk were subjected to. They will now bring tribute to the leader of the Black Mountains every week. The Labyrinth world is known for the fact that you have to spend money there. You can buy game resources for real resources, but you can't convert them back. Game money can be converted into charisma points. It was for their sake that the main character captured the resources of Lucas and Israk. The Black Mountains were rapidly growing stronger. While Hoenn was busy with his passion for the criminal underworld, Ben ran the organization. The main character generously distributed charisma points. Ellie was the one who was most struck by this. The main character gave her the next task. The girl needs to know about Frost and Hygrid's plans. Meanwhile, Hoenn plans to conquer Zeman. But before that, he decided to take care of Caesar. The protagonist told his subject that he intended to become the Demon King and create an army. Then he will be able to attack those who are on the side of good. Caesar was overjoyed. Every step along the path of evil increased his loyalty. This is exactly what the main character was trying to achieve. Now he can give any orders to Health. The Black Mountain organization grew rapidly, and all because Hoenn took into account the mistakes he made with Rodrigo and corrected them. Regular players still use the guide that the main character wrote several years ago for fun, but only a small part of Hoenn's technique is described there. Educating subjects is the same as playing a game. The main thing is to correctly upgrade the characteristics at the right time. If you focus only on developing strength, your subjects may rebel. If you only pump up obedience, you will end up with stupid and useless walkers. And in the end, because of their blind loyalty, they will only cause harm. The main character has a completely different approach. Subjects in the training stage receive the standard reward. When they reach a certain level, they are sent on missions. Having completed it, the subject enjoys the result and strives for development. When they complete a task on foot, they donate the resources they receive to the Black Mountains organization. However, subjects receive upgrade points equivalent to the cost of the donation. Of course, Hoenn takes 10% of this amount for himself, but no one cares about that. And all because nowhere else can such rapid growth be achieved. On foot, they even share tips with each other on how to divide up their upgrade points. In addition, the main character introduced a rating system. Since then, everyone has been competing with each other, trying to earn as many points as possible. This is a great motivation to keep working. Experiencing the results of their efforts on foot, they become more loyal to the Black Mountains organization. This is why Hoenn doesn't need to spend skill points on obedience. The main character has already understood that loyalty is just an illusion, empty words. Hoenn spent so much on Hygrid, Frost, and Bramberg, and they betrayed him. Lena successfully completed the task again and was incredibly happy about it. The girl has already risen to the first line of the rating. Caesar was busy with the protagonist's personal assignment, so he did not complete his main task. But Lena didn't care. She still laughed at her health about it. For some reason, Hoenn was sure that these two would not betray him. It's time to conquer the temple of the dark god. And this time, the main character decided to take Lena with him. He already spent a lot of time with Caesar. The Order of the Evil God is under the patronage of Bramberg himself. All its participants are enemies of the players. This is why Hoenn considers this goal to be ideal for the finale. If the hero succeeds in capturing the Temple of the Evil God, the whole world will learn about the greatness of the Black Mountains organization. All preparations were completed. Hoenn let Lena have his way. The girl and her criminal guild fighters set to work. Frost and Bramberg had a conversation about the successes of the Black Mountains. The Archduke scoffed at Hoenn for ruining the mayor's plans. Bramberg sought to seize both power and the underground. But now he was worried that the protagonist might regain his status as Rodrigo. Then all the servants of the orphanage director will be forced to carry out his orders again. Frost, however, was not at all worried about this. He already had his own army of zombie warriors. The Archduke asked Bramberg not to get involved in the black market, but he did not listen. That's why Frost refuses to help him. The mayor threatened that he would not forget this and would take revenge. Frost also wanted to bite into power. That's why he was raising an army of zombies. Only thanks to her can the Archduke no longer be subordinate to Bramberg. Frost managed to do this thanks to Penny, the daughter of the former leader of the Six Ranks. It was she who produced for the Archduke a substance that turned warriors into zombies. And Ellie found out about it. Finding the right moment, the protagonist's ally caught Penny. Thanks to the girl, she was going to find out everything about the zombie warriors and Frost's plans. There is one rule that all killers must follow: never get caught. Lena also took advantage of this rule. And if she can't escape from witnesses, she simply destroys them. The Temple of the Evil God's hobby started off well. Without losses, Lena and the criminal guild lost some of their enemies. Zeman ordered everyone to go inside the temple. Lena rushed after them. The villains were going to perform a ritual for strengthening. Some of them went into defense while Zeman read the words of the spell. But Lena wasn't going to wait. Together with her team, she dealt with the enemy defense. But this time was enough to perform the ritual. Zeman's image changed. His body emitted darkness. The villain generated forces and rushed to attack Lena. The girl realized that she would die if she tried to fight it off. So she retreated. Zeman was surrounded. He tried to defend himself with the powers of darkness, but nothing worked. The killers were too agile. While the others distracted Zeman with their attacks, Lena prepared for the decisive blow, and he managed to inflict several powerful wounds. In the end, Lena's legion accomplished the task. The satisfied woman did not hold back her emotions. Out of joy, she threw herself into Hoenn's arms. Lena felt that the boss helped. That's how it was. The main character invested all his pumping points into his subject's reflexes. Now Hoenn was going to show himself completely to Bramberg. He decided to set off fireworks and blow up the Temple of the Evil God. The next morning, everything was already prepared. Hoenn besieged the temple with tens of thousands of fireworks. This cost a lot of money, but the main character also acquired some serious explosives. He was going to write a statement in the sky. That same night, all the subjects arrived at the temple by order of Hoenn. Nobody knew why the boss had gathered everyone. Caesar activated the fireworks. The fire show has begun. Within a few minutes, everyone saw the sign in the sky. New mission: capture Bram. Ben was so stunned that he almost passed out. Hoenn grabbed the baby excitedly. He thought Ben was touched. But a moment later, the main character had no time for him. Ellie showed up with good news. She also brought Penny, Frost's assistant, with her. The hostage told her story. After killing her father, she was going to take revenge on the Six Ranks. Penny trained for a long time, mixing all sorts of potions. But one day Frost came to her. He said that the Six Ranks in the black market are run by Bramberg. The Archduke promised to help Penny destroy Brom and the soul destroyer that killed her butler. The girl gave Frost a forbidden potion that had been passed down in her family from generation to generation. This substance makes warriors tens of times stronger, but deprives them of their minds. Thus Frost raised an army. But after that, he stopped paying attention to Penny's goal. The girl realized that he couldn't be trusted. Then Penny kidnapped Ellie. The protagonist thanked his ally for a job well done. And he already figured out how to use Frost to destroy Brahma. Hoenn was about to attack the Archduke. The boss was confident that his warriors were much stronger than the zombies. A few days later, a worried servant burst into Frost's office. He reported that Hoenn was heading here with an army. Frost wasn't the least bit scared. He was even glad that the main character himself was coming to him. Frost hoped to test the strength of his own zombie army. Not even an hour had passed when that same Archduke stood at the window in a cold sweat and could not believe his eyes. Black Mountain destroyed everything Frost had worked so hard to create. Gale was the first to enter the fight. Her strength was simply incredible. Even the main character didn't know how the nanny managed to reach such a level. Caesar followed her and set to work. Both scattered the enemies in different directions. Meanwhile, Hohen's gaze fell on Frost, who was watching the fight from the window. The main character could not restrain himself and, laughing, declared that he would soon get to the traitor. This really scared the Archduke. He ordered his servant to summon elite warriors. While they held off Black Mountain, Frost hoped to escape. He had no idea that the main character's servants would be so strong. As Hohen approached the mansion, there were enemy elite warriors standing at the entrance. A dozen high-level players and NPCs. Ellie took on the job. She used her magic skill and declared that she would give her love to the strongest one. Frost's subjects began to fight among themselves. Meanwhile, Hohen entered the estate unhindered. After some time, Frost was tied up. The protagonist said that he would need the help of the Archduke. The traitor resisted and stated that he did not intend to cooperate with him. But Hohen had effective methods of persuasion. He said that if she refused, he could use Penny's medicine, or Ellie's charm. Also in Hohen's assortment of methods is the signature elixir of truth in the form of Gale and Caesar. Frost's mind changed abruptly. He agreed to do whatever he could.